much. Welcome, councillors, to council meeting, including policy committee meetings, the 1st of September 2020. I will call for any apologies.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
I give my apology for being unable to be there in person due to incapacitation at the moment, getting old and slow. Reminder this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Please be patient. Electronic meetings are different to face-to-face. You'll be invited to speak by the meeting coordinator. Raise your hand. Please do not speak over the others. First of all, any apologies?
There are no apologies, Mr. Mayor.
This council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to be live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that if and when you speak at this council meeting, that you ensure you're respectful to others and use appropriate language at all times. Orange City Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. A recording will be made for administrative purposes. I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I'd also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, of the Wiradjuri Nation, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present. Does any councillor wish to declare any conflicts of interest in any matter for consideration at the council meeting?
Councillor Nugent.
Councillor Nugent.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. In the Sport and Rec Policy Committee meeting, item 2.2, I'm on the committee of Gold Seekers Orienteering, and Gold Seekers Orienteering is one of the groups that have requested funding and is recommended for funding. In that item, I consider it to be a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest, and I will be staying in the meeting, but I do need to acknowledge that interest in that item.
Thanks, Councillor Nugent. I have two, and that's enclosed. Mr. CEO, if you will, enclosed, which is item 6.3. The item is Barker's Cottage.
Noted, thank you.
I have a son who's in New York who's expressed an interest in that, so mine is a non-pecuniary interest. And then enclosed 6.3, the site is Seaburn Drive, and it's the Cherry, what's it called?
Cherrywood.
Cherrywood Homes.
Yeah.
I planted all the trees there, so I do have an interest.
Call that interest.
Noted, Mr. Mayor.
That's a lame one.
It's item 6.3 as well, thank you.
Yeah, okay. There are no Merrill minutes. Now, there was no open forum this evening because Mr. Smith has pulled out. The council meeting resumes with the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Orange City Council held on the 18th of August.
Happy to move it, Mr. Chairman.
Second it, Mr. Mayor.
But in moving that, Mr. Chairman, I just want to...
I think that was like they moved Councillor Duffy, seconded Councillor Munro. Is that correct?
Correct.
In saying that, I just want to refer everyone to item 5.10, request for financial assistance with the Orange Wine Festival there. And I want to congratulate them for calling that wine festival off. And I think they did a fantastic job, as have done the Millbelt Markets, Australian National Field Days, and a whole heap of sporting organisations who cancelled their thing, which shows that they're putting our welfare in front of everything else. I think that they should be congratulated.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. All in favour of the minutes, please? Hands?
Unanimous.
Thank you. The council meeting now adjourns to the conduct of the policy committees, and we'll start with the Planning and Development Policy Committee, Chairperson, Councillor Turner.
Mayor, pleasure to open the Planning and Development Committee meeting. Item 1, there is no apologies and no pecuniary interest. We'll go to 2.1 of general reports. 2.1, item approved under delegated authority.
Move the
of
recommendation. Second, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Whitten, seconded by Councillor Munro. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye. Oh.
Councillor Hamley? Yep. Councillor Taylor, have you put your hand up? Yep. So unanimous. I will go to 2.2, development application, the Orange Civic Precinct.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Second it.
And that,
By Councillor Nugent, seconded by Councillor Munro. Any discussion? Duffy.
Kevin, I just have a discussion there. This just seems to be a formality of something as far as our process goes, is using that area. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. Particularly assists with getting liquor licences for events there. The Liquor, Gaming and Racing will always ask, do you have a development consent in place? So we'll be able to say yes. Not saying what we've done in the past is incorrect. We considered it was ancillary to the existing approved uses, but we're just tidying it up, that's all, administratively speaking.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mr. Hodges. No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Go on to 2.2, development application.
2.3.
Move it.
2.3, development application for 78 Forbes Road.
I'll move that, Chair.
Happy to second.
Councillor Duffy, seconded. Munro again. Any discussion? Councillor Nugent.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just on this one, this is a sort of site that has a bit of history in terms of the Housing Plus previous proposal in terms of social and affordable housing. This is a lot less intensive development. There's still quite a large number of trees to be removed from the site. It's not clear, well, I can't sort of see a reference to how many trees will actually be removed. I can see a reference to how many will be retained, which is great, 24 to be retained on site. I do notice one of the submitters, Ms McDonald, raises the issue of the number of trees being removed, and maybe with a less intense development, 3-lot development rather than 5-lot development, maybe some more trees could be retained, but that's not what's before us. It's a 5 residential lot development. But Ms McDonald also raises the issue of what happens if we put in protections now. This is for the subdivision. What happens when those individual blocks get developed and the DAs come up? Do those protections sort of carry over to the next stage? So I'd just like clarification on those points, if I may, about the numbers of trees, the types of trees, what condition they're in. I see that our manager city presentation has commended the developer on the number of trees to be retained, and has obviously had a look at the trees on site. But if I could just have a bit more information, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'll just have you that information.
Yes, I can answer that, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So certainly in relation to the number of trees, there are a fair number being removed, 109 in total. That's varying in size. So that includes smaller ones, also includes radiata pine trees. It's a variety of them, so it's not just saying big trees. We've certainly gone to the efforts to maintain or retain the larger ones. So in the list of trees, you'll see a lot of the European type trees that are on that block, like the pin oaks. We've particularly protected those. So when they're of a good structure and health, we've done all we can to control that. And how we're doing that is 2 different ways. So one is a covenant, so that's a restriction on the title of the land that will follow the block forever, which restricts by identification by the map that was submitted with the application. It identifies the 24 trees. It restricts what the developer can do near those trees. So if they're in the protection zones, they have to avoid the roots up to 10%. They can, and then if they're putting, say, pathways too close to that, they will be porous to allow the water to flow through to the trees. So we've got controls around that, and also areas where it fully restricts buildings going, so in the structural root zone. We go through into, then there's standard conditions, or not standard conditions, there's conditions for the ongoing management of that development into the future that says they must protect those trees as well. So there would be 2 breaches. There'd be a civil one, but also a legal one under the planning scheme, and if that was the case, it would be on the spot fines of $8,000 or court action, as well as the civil liability they would face. So there's reasonable protections by a number of conditions that are at varying stages through the consent, allowing for the different stages that'll come in. So it's got pretty good.
And so those conditions.
Mr. Chair, I asked a question.
Councillor Kidd, yes.
Look, this is a very, very interesting one. I've been there on several occasions and had a look around. This was a block that was completely overplanted. Have a look at the size of the block. It was incredibly overplanted. And if you go up and have a look at the circumference of the trunk of many of these trees, they are quite spindly and anemic looking trees, actually. Not all of them, but the majority of them. A lot of the shrubs and other trees have been thinned out a little bit. But I would suggest that this is one where you have err on the side of caution a little bit, because some of these trees are not going to make it. They're not particularly, not all of them, there's some good ones too, by the way, but there are some of the trees that have been marked here for retention are not very, very good specimens, all because they were planted too close together and they're very, very spindly and not characteristics of the species. My second question would be here, what happens in the future with particularly some of those trees if they do take off and they present as a hazard to the house, to the drainage, to the sewer, or to the water lines? Would that be come back on us because we've said they have to be retained?
Through you, Mr. Chair, any tree would require maintenance of some form by the owners. In terms of if there was a need down the track to remove a tree or to maintain a tree, whether it's lopping or removal, the applicant could come back to council and ask for approval to do that. So that would be either through the tree removal process we have or even modification of this consent. So there'd be two ways they could technically do it. So they could.
Yeah. Just a supplementary question then, isn't it determined whether a tree can be removed on a privately owned building block? Doesn't that refer back to a certain diameter of the trunk?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. It's 300 mils.
Yep. Thanks.
Councillor Duffy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, my question is, I'm happy to support this 100%. That's why I moved the motion. But the issue with this, me, is that all the neighbourhood is quite happy with this development and there's no real objection to it. But of the 24 trees that are being saved, are any of those gum trees? The reason why I asked that question is because you've only got to go up to near Canoppers High School and you see one big branch laying down. You've only got to travel around the edge of town and you see branches down everywhere. And they are going to do exactly what the Mayor says. They're going to become an absolute hazard. So I think that we probably should revisit it again if they want to knock a few more down, because I mean they're building units there. They want to protect their residents and those type of things there. So we should do everything in our power to make that happen. And if it means removing more trees, we remove them and keep the ones that aren't going to be a hindrance to them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, confirming that the tree that is a eucalypt tree identified is tree number 16, which is right up on the back boundary of that property. So it's some distance from the building, so it should be okay.
Only one, Mr. Hodges.
Yes, the rest on page 65 is the list of trees to be retained. Pin oaks.
There's a white gum too. That's a eucalypt. Under, if you have a look, you've got eucalypt, you've got white gum, and then eucalypt.
Oh, yes.
That's white gum.
15.
Yep.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Chairman, the fact is you can go down, drive down William Maker Drive, and you see 3 white gum trees that are left there. I reckon when you come back in about 10 or 15 years' time, they're going to be absolutely massive, the same way as the ones up in Cara Place up there near the railway line off Woodward Street there. And I think they're going to cause a problem. So I think we should be really going to hope they come back and ask them to remove.
Sorry, just a supplementary question, Mr. Chair. So my understanding that the Manager City presentation has discussed this matter with the developer, and the developer's happy with the trees to be retained. Is that
correct?
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one, Mr. Hodges, on page 37, where it refers to the 4 lots and then later on another 3 lots. What's the difference, briefly, between Torrance Title subdivision and the community title subdivision. Is there any reason why the developer has asked for this staged development?
Torrens titles is the normal allotment ownership scheme that lots have, where you can buy and sell them on their own. The community title is that it's where they share particular bits of land. So you'll see the Battle Axe driveway for those lots coming along the side on the western boundary there. That's the community strip, feeding in to give access into the three blocks in there. It just limits down access directly off Forbes Road or Escort Way. So that's the reason why they've done it that way.
Any reason why it's a staged development, though? Just their choice.
Yeah, it's up to the developer. Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? No other comment? I'll put the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? There's no. Mr. Mayor, you're right. No one against. Unanimous. We will move on to 2.4. Development application 4613 Mitchell Highway, Lucknow. Rose moved it. You seconded it, Councillor Whitten?
No.
No. Councillor Miletto has seconded. Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move an amendment for a deferral, subject to a review on the entry of traffic into the station. Mr. Chairman, this particular DA was before us. I think it may have been withdrawn, and the director will clarify that later. That the original DA application actually had a turning lane, vehicles travelling east and into the station on the original development application, and it did so because of the obvious. It's Lucknow. It has a very high traffic flow. It's very narrow. There isn't any space for vehicles to overtake on the left-hand side. And the author of the report on page 105 has said that the dual centre turning lane required to access the site when turning across the highway. They're now saying that this is not required because the actual floor space of the shop isn't of the same size of the original DA. That has nothing to do with the vehicles driving in. The number of Bowsers is going to be 20, the same as the original DA application. So the number of traffic movements into the site potentially is the same. And it will also cater for trucks. So if you have a truck that wants to turn right into that particular service station, it may be there for a while, and so may the people sitting behind it. So theoretically, it's not a discussion for this particular DA, but probably Lucknow probably needs a safety turning lane right across Lucknow, and it probably needs its speed limit reduced from 60 to 50, because a number of the residents there are quite concerned because of the fact that turning vehicles and they've got nowhere to turn, they sort of are starting to worry about their own safety. They love the fact that Lucknow is growing and that there are a number of businesses there that are quite successful, and they're not trying to stop those businesses from operating. This is totally a safety matter, and the adjacent neighbour and the applicant have worked very well together. They've negotiated a number of factors, hours of usage, all these sorts of things. This is specifically to do with this turning lane right off the highway into this garage. And I believe it needs to be deferred until we can determine, because originally the RMS approved it. They approved it. So why has it been taken away? Probably cost, but I don't think that's a good enough reason to remove a turning lane.
Mr. Hodge.
Certainly, Council approved a previous development consent for this land back in December 2018. It was a substantially bigger development, had 3 rows of Bowsers on it, and also a 200 square metre convenience store. What the proposal before us is effectively demolishing the existing couple of bowsers and in reinstalling them further east on the site with the two 70,000 litre tanks, and also putting a canopy over the top of the bowsers for environmental control. So effectively, we've looked at this as it's an environmental, they're environmental work, so there are new tanks going in, the new bowsers. Certainly when, as Councillor Whitten's pointed out, there's 20 hoses in total of 2 bowsers, but you know each bowser has multiple hoses nowadays. So effectively what both our technical services staff and also RMS have had a look at, it's not an intensification of the existing development. There is on page 106 a plan that does show the recommendation arising from meetings with staff have had with RMS or Transport for New South Wales, showing where the no stopping zone areas would be, and that's in lieu of having turning bays. So they're saying because it's not an intensification, not the significant traffic generating development that it was previously approved as, and there's a condition of consent that requires the surrender of that consent in this proposal. That's why it doesn't need the turning lane from the advice we've received.
Councillor Taylor.
Speak for the amendment, Mr. Chairman. Look, I've seen a few DAs go through over the years, and the fact of the matter is that there was DA that was substantially larger. Yes, I admit that fact, but the still is, as Councillor Whitten has pointed out, there's 20 bowsers. It's a major increase on what's there already. It may be, as Mr. Hodges indicated, environmental work, an update, but also I would imagine, and it's totally in their rights, for the developer, it's also, they would expect a return on investment. That return, hopefully for them, increased patronage. So that patronage certainly will generate more traffic. Owners would be hoping that it would generate more custom and traffic than is currently being generated there on that particular site. So I'm with Councillor Whitten on this. I can't see a difference. I really can't see a difference. I can see as far as the size of the development, and yes, it's been then cut back as far as the general store side of it and so forth. But for fuel, I would imagine that with that significantly larger number of outlets, that they are hoping for an increased patronage. And, so it's a safety measure, as Councillor Whitten has pointed out, and it was in there before, and it should remain in there. I believe strongly it should remain in there. It's a safety issue. The Campbells there have been very cooperative with the proponents, but this is a concern for them, and I think that most of their concerns have been addressed, or they've got to a point where they're accepting of some of the changes that will take place. I think location of compressors and so forth like that. But the fact of the matter is it will increase patronage. It's not rocket scientist to assume that the developer is spending this money to hopefully increase profit and increase patronage. And so I believe that the turning lane should be looked at again and approve this. It has been approved before, was approved before. So obviously the proponents would be looking to, and just because it's may not generate the amount of patronage, certain that they would be looking to the future to increase their patronage. So I think it's.
Councillor Miletto.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to speak against the amendment, but raise another amendment if possible. The reason I say that is I do acknowledge the concerns by Councillor Whitten and Taylor. However, the amendment which I would like to make is that go ahead in its present format, and that obviously the RTA and council have done their due diligence with regards to traffic flow, things like that. But what I would ask is that a period of 3 months be used to investigate whether there are changes needed or required. And
Councillor Turner, you can only take a foreshadowed motion and deal with the amendment that you've got in front of you.
I've already got a motion and an amendment.
you've got a motion and an amendment, you can have a foreshadowed amendment, and then if the amendment gets up or doesn't get up, you can put it forward then.
Okay, thank you.
All of that, do you?
Happy to do that. And as I was saying, I think there's obviously it's been looked at by the RMS and so forth, and so forth. So I think there's still an opportunity to change it if required, if there becomes issues, and quite regularly, as Councillor Turner would know, we have these issues raised, brought back to the Traffic Committee, and they're addressed at that point in time. I still think that can be done, but it gives us the opportunity to look at what those traffic flows are. If there are issues with it, well, let's have a look at what they are and address them as soon as we can.
Just to clarify, what is your foreshadowed amendment?
That a period of 3 months be taken into consideration to monitor traffic flows and any issues that may arise.
Councillor Turner, if I may, I'll speak for the amendment. I go out that way a fair bit, going out and coming back in. And I can tell you that if traffic are coming from Orange and turning into anywhere along there, particularly a truck or a bigger vehicle, say pulling a trailer, it causes all sorts of havoc along there, I can tell you. And I think if there is room to move to put in a turning lane, I have no doubt if we don't do it now down the track, we will. I remember hearing all the reasons why we didn't have to have this and have that at the Five Ways when we put in the petrol station there. And it was only a short period of time until we had absolute chaos over there at the Five Ways, and they had to make some changes to put some median strips in so you couldn't turn certain ways and you could only turn left coming out. And I think in this case here, when you've got that amounts of Bowsers, and they will be selling diesel, and obviously they will attract trucks and heavy vehicles, I think if you have a look on the photo that's on page 106, just imagine that truck there that's shown there on the other side of the road, but it was coming from Orange, and it went to go in there, and it'd have all, and say there was a line of traffic coming from the east, from Sydney, you'd have lots of traffic banked up behind that truck that was going to turn right, coming from the east, and that just exacerbates the problems that you can have and more likelihood of an accident. So I think it can be done, it should be done. And I don't think the RMS or whatever they call themselves are always right. They make recommendations to us, but they're not always right.
That's a point of clarification, please, Mr. Chair.
Miller.
With the amendment, if we're asking for a deferral, what are we expecting to happen if the decision's already been made by the RMS? I mean, what are we expecting or asking them to do differently apart from that turning lane, which they've already done their surveys and whatever? What are we expecting to do in addition to what they've already done?
May I answer that, Mr. Chairman?
You may, yes.
So they originally went out and done all of the soil samples and drilled hole in roads, and the original DA had a turning lane in there.
Yes.
It is the opinion, and I'll be corrected by the director, that because of the floor space size, they're saying that it is not required anymore. The floor space size has got nothing to do with the traffic flow. And then again, I'm not a planner. I'm just just using logic and common sense. Because the simple fact is, if I was to ask the question, Mr. Chairman, what are the number of vehicles that go across the NDR? What is the traffic movements on the NDR? Number of trucks. Ballpark figure. Isn't it something like between 5,000 and 6,000 just trucks a day? And every exit off the Northern Distributor into any facility has a turning lane. All those vehicles go through Lucknow. All the vehicles who come through Summer Street heading east go through Lucknow. If we take all of those vehicles off the NDR heading east and through Summer Street, all of them go through Lucknow. And you're asking...
I think Councillor Mileto's had an answer.
Yeah, and you have...
Councillor Hamley.
Yeah.
I just had a question which has been answered, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, could I speak just one thing?
CEO would like a comment.
Clarify from the mover of the amendment. It seems to me you're asking for a deferral, and just a bit of Councillor Mileto's question. The deferral would seek the RMS to review their decision, or it could ask the applicant, or it could ask the applicant
Whose
to put
decision
one
was
in.
it, Mr. CEO?
Well, it would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Greenham, it would be our engineers, but it's their highway, so they would have had the final sign-off. Mr. Greenham's nodding. So is that what I'm writing? That it is to defer to seek the RMS to review their decision?
Inspection as well.
Okay.
Well, there's definitely got to be something done.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to clarify the...
Can I just clarify that?
I'll follow process, Mr. Chairman, and I'll talk when it's my turn.
Just clarify something.
Yeah,
I think you
Councillor
asked for an
Duffy
inspection as well.
All right.
Asked for an inspection as well. I thought that was one of your first
Well,
words.
we've been out there, but if council wish to do an inspection,
I'd
that's...
much rather have an inspection as well. Mr. Chairman, I want to support the amendment. Number one, because what the Mayor has said about the diesel trucks and those type of things, and what Councillor Whitten says the amount of trucks are going in both ways over there. But I'm not a fan of pretty pictures and those type of things there. I'd like to look at the practicalities of things. The practicalities of a few things that we've done around here. You go to Prince Street, new cars can't even turn right, either going either way. The same in various other little places around here, and that was all endorsed by the RMS as well. So I would much rather see the practicalities of what is actually happening out there, so I can get an understanding of what the actual flow will be, because sometimes the RMS and these other organisations give us information which cramps things up a fair bit, and you've only got to have a look at the NDR with where Bunnings is and all those type of things there. So I want to support the amendment 100%.
Okay, any other speakers? No.
Councillor McRae's got a hand up.
Joe. Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I guess it's more of a question, but it sounds like there's, if I could just clarify, there's a strong argument that this particular part of Lucknow on the highway receives all of the traffic that comes into Orange from the east before any of that traffic is diverted at the moment to the NDR or in the future to the Southern Feeder Road. Have I got that right, that this is one of the key locations in terms of traffic flow, and that would be between, say, this point in Lucknow and that forked intersection, which is the proposed site of a welcome sign? That's right, it's one of the most busiest spots, and that's a concern for safety because it's got such high traffic for all of our visitors, all of our locals, everybody coming from Bathurst, from Millthorpe, from Blaney. It's one of those key entries into Orange. Have I got that right?
I understand so, yeah.
Right.
Unless you've got an odd car coming in from Bing or something like that. That's, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify, again, unless the highway's closed for some reason, all the traffic coming from the east is likely to be going along this road.
That's correct. No other speakers?
Against the motion, Mr. Chairman. So the RMS, I suppose what we're highlighting here, and this DA is sort of instigating it, is that it needs to be something looked at in Lucknow, because even in the report it says that they're going to be putting no stopping signs there along where used to be the Two Fat Ladies. I don't know what it's called now. There's another restaurant going there. All the Sammies used to park along there. Now, even if a car is turning right into whatever, the garage, you actually have to go off one of our major highways into the rubble to avoid a collision. You get around there, there's no, legally, can't pass that vehicle because there's no road there. Legally, you have to sit behind it and wait for it to turn. So it needs to be addressed, and this is if we're going to be approving development applications, we're going to be compounding that issue and putting the risk and safety of people's lives in danger. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chairman.
Do the foreshadowed motion first, or
Foreshadowed motion.
And I'll move the amendment be put. Move the amendment be put.
Mr. Chair.
foreshadowed motion has been withdrawn. It's been moved that the motion be put.
No, the amendment.
The amendment, sorry, yep, the amendment be put. You're all aware of what the amendment is for deferral and further discussion with RMS, et cetera, et cetera.
Would you like me to read it out, Mr. Chair?
Yes, thanks you.
At the moment, the motion is that DA, whatever it is, be deferred for inspection and to request a review of the decision by the RMS. That's pretty much it. Not
I think
asking
to be
anything.
fair on the RMS, Mr. CEO, it should be the decision of council engineers and the RMS.
Okay. That's
It's a combined.
so it's a review.
Everyone clear with that?
question.
The
Yeah,
motion,
hold it. I don't think that wording's strong enough because we're not asking to review the whole thing. We're asking them to review the turning part, right? We're saying we agree with it, allowing the
That's what I was going
grant,
to say.
but it's about the turning.
Of the building.
Yeah, deferral
That's what
for
we
inspection
want to do.
and to request a view of entrance arrangements.
Yeah.
everyone
Passing
clear?
way.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? This is the amendment. Unanimous.
I think Councillor McRae.
Sorry,
Councillor McRae.
Councillor McRae, I keep forgetting to look up there. You voted for it as well, right?
No, against.
And against.
Against.
Okay. Anyway, the amendment is carried. The amendment becomes the motion. All those in favour? Is unanimous this time. That completes the Planning and Development Committee meeting, and I call on Councillor Miletto to conduct the Employment and Economic Development Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'd like to open the Employment and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting on 1st of September 2020, the time now being 7:36 p.m. We've indicated that there are no declarations of interest. Go to item number 2, section number 2, item 2.1, minutes of the Economic Development Community Committee held on.
Move the minutes, Mr Chairman.
I'll second those, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Whitten, seconded by Councillor Kidd. Is
Yep.
there any discussion on this item?
Yes, Chairman, I just find
Councillor
it a little
Duffy.
bit strange. I mean, it's just a comment as regards to comparing Melbourne with Orange as far as those type of things there. Melbourne's got a population of around about 5 or 6 million, and Orange has got 40,000. So with the, I'm talking about 3.2 on page 29. I just think that's a little bit odd.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Is there any other discussion on this item?
Look, if I may, in relation to what Councillor Duffy said, these sort of statistics that are put together are very, very handy, actually, and you can look at like for like, that's with Bathurst and Dubbo, as that is actually done through SpeedMap and others. But it's indicative to look at other areas, and if you look at Sydney and look at Melbourne and other areas, to show that there is a decrease in the occupancies of retail premises due to other forms of shopping that's occurring now. So I think that's why the information's there. But I think it's just fantastic to get these sort of reports and the sort of statistical data that we can get hold of now to sort of, do our planning better, I suppose.
Councillor Whitten.
Look, I agree with the Mayor, Mr Chairman. I think what this report is trying to indicate is the fact that all communities are struggling with trying to keep their CBDs populated with retail. It doesn't matter if you're Orange or Collins Street in Melbourne. It's fate they've got the same problems. The people aren't. They're shopping online.
Councillor Nugent.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Just, I suppose, to follow on those two comments, I think this data is really important. As we go into the OC Future City project, which is on the agenda later tonight, this data is providing baseline data that we can sort of look at what impact the OC Future City project has as we go along. So I think it's really important data, and I think I'm sure we are planning to continue to collect that as we go forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion? There being none, I'll put the motion. Show of hands, all for. Any against? Declare the motion carried. That concludes our Employment and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting. The time now being 7:40 p.m. I call upon Councillor Whitten to conduct the Infrastructure Policy Committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Miletto. I'll open up the Infrastructure Policy Committee meeting for 1 December at 7:39, and there are no declarations of pecuniary interest, I believe, in this committee. None. I'll move on to item 2.1, minutes of the City of Orange Traffic Committee meeting held on the 11th of August.
Mr. Chair.
Been moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Miletto. Discussion, Councillor Nugent.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just seeking clarification in relation to the proposal to introduce angle parking in Matthews Avenue outside Bletchington School. I note that there were some submissions, members of the community who live near there, concerned about the safety issue when reversing it. You know, if you've got angle parking either side of a driveway when you're reversing out, sometimes it really inhibits the sight lines, and you have to sort of drive right out into the middle of the road to be able to sort of back and go forward. So was that those sort of safety considerations discussed at the meeting and acknowledged in the proposal or the recommendation to install that angle parking?
Well, Councillor Nugent, that certainly was discussed, but amongst other things, it's acknowledged that it's no different to any other driveways where there's angle parking all through the CBD of Orange. That is one of the reasons why that particular section where most of the homes are going to be line marked.
Okay.
To alleviate that as much as possible, but
So there will be line marking?
Between, as I said, between Peasley Street and Lord's Place.
And that hopefully will keep people...
Hopefully if they do the right thing. Yes, that's right. Okay. But our traffic officers will be policing it. One of the main reasons that the angle parking is that it will create another 20 spaces. I think roughly about another 20 spaces. So it to do with relieving the congestion in that area just at that peak hour period.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Chair. If I may, on page 8, it's 3.4 Dalton Street, Sale to Anson, centre parking for the DPI. This one really surprises me. That's one of the few streets where we can have centre parking in Orange, and I've never seen an accident there, ever. And if you have a look what is along there, prior to that was the old hospital and some doctors, facilities, and I think accommodation for students. And I've never seen an accident along there, and I'll go past that way quite often. And I think if it works, why in the hell would we be taking, I don't know how many there are, why would we be taking parking away?
Well, the answer that we had at the traffic committee meeting is the council was concerned about the tree roots, the health of the tree roots. By digging it up, it would allow the tree roots to become healthier, but also the RMS was against the proposal because apparently the length of the centre line parking, the road, it is not wide enough under RMS conditions.
Well, how come it was before?
Well, laws and rules change, Councillor Kidd, and maybe it was never noted before, I don't know, but that the RMS were against it for that reason because then it's not wide enough.
Well,
council garden staff were against it because of the health of the tree roots and the trees that we want to remain in the island and become healthier than what they are at the moment.
Well, I can understand that about the tree roots, and I think that can be addressed in several different ways. But I'll tell you what, those trees there are as healthy as any plain trees that we have anywhere else in Orange, I can tell you that. But again, I think this might be just one of those knee-jerk reactions that, again, RMS come up with a rule on the way. Now, there was never, ever, in my 30 years being on council, there's never, ever been a discussion about problems along there with parking, whether it be a traffic hazard, and I've never ever heard a comment before on the health of the trees along there. And this is the first time I've ever heard it. So we're saying that we don't want it there because the RMS say that it's not wide enough or whatever, and the trees are not very healthy. It's interesting.
Any of the council officers like to comment? Verena?
I suppose before Mr Greenham speaks, but please come to the podium, sir. I've got a question for you as well, Mr Chair of Traffic. Who referred this item to Traffic Committee to have it removed? Parking. Because I think we all agree that part of the review. Okay. Carry on, Mr.
But I've got an
One
amendment.
moment. Yep. Just one. We'll let the director speak first.
Thank you, and through the chair.
Sorry, I'm not chairing this one.
Yeah, I'll turn it. Carry on, Mr Greenham.
Thank you. Essentially, there is some changes to the Australian Standard 2580 for parking, and to allow parking through there, we would also have to implement a 40 km/h speed restriction. I guess it's not something that is definitely off the cards altogether. We could still revisit this once the DPI actually opens up, and we have a look at the demand for parking in that area. But certainly at the moment there was enough, I suppose, views against having parking in that centre island. It has been closed to parking in that centre island since the hospital has been shut down as well. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
So, Councillor Duffy, I understand you want to move an amendment.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I
but
want to move an
could you let me deal with the minutes and get them through, and then you can raise your amendment as a matter arising. Otherwise, it doesn't fit into the minutes, right? So is there any further discussion on the minutes of the Traffic Committee? No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Councillor Duffy, you have a matter arising over the minutes?
Matter arising, Mr Chairman. I cannot see, and I'd like to move this way, that we leave it as status quo and wait for a couple of months after the DPI building is built. So I had a learned friend who said something to me the other day. He said if you put them on a bit of a 45-degree angle, they would fit. They would meet the requirements of what we're talking about as the distance there. So I would think it'd be a fairly good idea if we just said, look, okay, we'll leave the status quo for a few months and then have a review of what's there. Someone might second that. I'm quite happy to go along with it.
Councillor Duff, you have to note that the status quo at the moment is no parking.
Yeah.
Aren't we taking it away?
So what you might want to consider, just as some, so you may want to change it to say you would like it reviewed to allow the parking to become legal.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the director has just told us that the current parking situation doesn't meet standards in New South Wales.
If it goes on 45-degree, it may meet the standard.
So your amendment might be to send back to the Traffic Committee.
Correct. Yep.
To review making it legal. Recommended sizes. Is that fair?
So is it an amendment?
No, it's a motion. He's raising a motion. Yeah, it's not an amendment, sorry. The matter arising, so he's moving a motion. So to have staff do anything on behalf of a councillor, you need to move a motion. Otherwise, they don't do it because it doesn't get documented and it doesn't go in the books.
Mr Chair, if I may speak to that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Kidd, you may.
Look, I think one of the things that I think is quite important here is that, we're always under the pump for lack of parking, and here we are taking parking away. Now, we know there's going to be an increased pressure in that area on parking. I have no doubt in the wide world about that. But we're only considering the DPI here. What about a couple of the businesses that are on the northern side of that street? Right on the corner, for instance, is, I think it's radiography. Okay, quite a substantive business. And I think there's one, perhaps two medical related businesses along that street on the northern side still. So I think it's worth looking at.
Yep. So the motion.
And by the way, can I just make a comment? Even though parking is supposedly illegal there, by geez, the people that have been working on that site use it for parking a lot.
You've just dobbed them in, Mr Mayor.
Mayor, you seconded that motion, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I think we'll get the clarification from the CEO, but we're basically what Mr CEO, with the permission of the mover, is that we're referring it back to the Traffic Committee to review, to bring it back to council for legal parking.
That's what I've got. So that the
happy with that?
The concept of parking in Dalton Street be referred to the Traffic Committee.
Councillor McRae.
3 months after the building opens.
Yep. Councillor McRae.
Yeah, if I might just mention in the detailed bottom of page 27 of our minutes, but it states that it's recommended not to install centre parking without a speed reduction. So are we also considering therefore that there would be a speed reduction that we would be open to allow that centre parking in this location to be safe for the users of both the DPI and, as the Mayor's mentioned, the number of businesses on that northern side. So I imagine that's what the Traffic Committee has concerns about, not the centre parking on its own, but the current speed limit not being safe if the centre parking is reactivated.
Yeah. And I think we'll take that on board when the Chairman of Traffic brings us back to us with if you want parking there, then these are the conditions, I should imagine.
Mr Chair, it's my understanding from the RMS, if you have centre parking, you need to reduce the speed limit to 40.
Mm.
You learn a lot.
So, does everybody understand Councillor Duffy's motion? Do all those in favour of referring it back to the Traffic Committee? It's been accepted.
One.
I'll move on to item 3.1, which is current works.
Do the recommendation, Mr.
Moved by Councillor Nugent. I have a second, Councillor Miletto. Any discussion on works? Councillor Nugent, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Taylor. Just some questions about water. Very important subject. And obviously our combined water storage has gone above 50%, which is fantastic. A long way from 100%, but much better than below 25. So in terms of the questions, there's a discussion about smart meters and smart water meters, which sound great. I'm just interested to know what the purpose of those smart water meters are, sort of down track. Like, we're obviously monitoring water usage, but what intent? Second one is in relation to the current triggers in relation to pumping from Macquarie River and environmental flows. Where are we up to with that now that we're above 50%? And the third one is the oil spill in the creek line. But I was walking through park this morning, Mould Park, and noticed all of those, what to call them, but they're in the creek line to clean it up.
Booms.
The booms. Just wondering, we know anything more about that, or whether, I'm not sure whether we can say in this forum, but just where we're up to with investigation.
Greenham, you got all those questions?
I'm happy to ask them one at a time.
Yeah, no dramas. Thank you, and through the chair, I'll just start with the booms. The booms are there to contain the spill. It has been investigated. We haven't actually, those investigations are still underway. We haven't actually identified the source. We have put one application, I believe, of the surface application of a granulated product that floats on the water and is hydrophobic, so it won't absorb water, but it does absorb the hydrocarbons. So that the spill has been contained and at least the initial round of cleanup has been done, and we're just checking what else comes down the line before we actually remove the booms. The other one was the environmental flows, I believe. Is that correct?
Oh, well, just in terms of in relation to Macquarie, pumping from Macquarie and
Okay. So as soon as we hit the 40% combined storage, we went back to our normal environmental flow regime, which is up to 1 megalitre per day is released out of Suma Park Dam when we have up to 1 megalitre per day flowing into Suma Park Dam. So as soon as we reached that combined storage of 40%, that was instigated. And we also have to maintain 1.75 megalitre per day flow at the third crossing downstream. So as of 6 p.m. tonight, there was 16 megalitres flowing over that third crossing. 16 megalitres per day as an instantaneous flow. The other one is the trigger for the Macquarie River. That trigger for the Macquarie River, when we reached combined storage of 50%, reverts back to the 108 megalitre per day instantaneous flow trigger from the initial 38 megalitre per day trigger that was a temporary arrangement under the Water Supply Critical Needs Act, which was put in place for 1 year or until we got to a combined storage of 50%. So last week when we got to that combined storage, it goes down to 38. At the moment, at 6 p.m. tonight, the instantaneous flow in the Macquarie River at Long Point was 2,644 megalitres per day. So we can certainly continue pumping under that regime. The other question was about the smart meters, smart water meters. Smart water meters, very similar to a lot of the energy companies will give you a device that will actually track your usage in real time. Smart water meter will actually feed back through the 4G network, I believe it is, and inform a program showing what your real time usage is, and we'll track that through. So the customer can log into there. It can identify that, okay, through the night there was a base flow there when they didn't have any taps on. So there may be a leakage within their system. So I guess the main idea of having that in place so that people can sort of turn their showers on, see how much water is being used when they're having a shower. They can also just monitor their water usage on a day-to-day basis, whether they're watering the gardens, and just see what effect that has, and you can see it in real time. So that's the real benefit there. It's intended that it will drive water conservation, and it will, from council's perspective, we won't be monitoring these extremely closely. There's no intent to put someone on to look at everyone's water meter, but we probably will set up some software devices that'll track when there's a base flow through the night, particularly on our large users, then talk to them about whether they've actually done any leak detection within their premises.
Yeah. Is large water use?
The first initial trial is definitely our large water users, both residential and business. Yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just a question, Mr. Greenham.
Councillor Taylor. Yeah, Councillor Taylor's next. Councillor Duffy.
Raised with. We've all seen in recent days and overflowing from Lake.
We can't hear Councillor Taylor.
It might be me not talking enough. Is that better?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah. The question was asked of me today, and I believe, Mr. Mayor, you may have spoken to someone too, and a former councillor actually, and Councillor Duffy may have. The question was asked of me about Lake Canobolas, and we've all seen the photographs in recent days of Lake Canobolas overflowing. And the councillors that have been here a little while would remember that we upgraded significantly our infrastructure as far as Lake Canobolas is concerned, part of our emergency water program, which I think was back in, from memory, and Councillor Kidd might, or Duffy, or someone who was around, he might remember. I think it was around 2014, 2015, something like that.
Spot on.
The basic question is, we've got all this overflow from Lake Canobolas. Why? And I understand that it flows directly into Molong's water supply of Molong Dam, but why can't Orange City, whilst we are at 50%, that's wonderful, but we still need to go a fair way to have us in a really safe position for the oncoming summer and seasons ahead. Why can't we pump while the water is overflowing from the wall? Why can't we pump or increase pumping from Lake Canobolas to top up our own supply? Is it a regulatory thing, or is it just that we haven't really looked too closely at it?
It's certainly one of the options we were looking at for drought security when we had water in Lake Canobolas and we were fast depleting our own resources. It isn't part of our licensed water supply system at the present. Our licensed water supply system.
That's regulatory.
Yes, it's one part of it, but it's not to say that it couldn't be part of our water supply solution in the future.
Okay, well.
So our licence at the moment is to operate Spring Creek Dam, Zoomer Park Dam as our water supply sources.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, could I, as a matter arising, just move a motion that we investigate what options we have as far as accessing the water of Lake Canobolas when it's overflowing?
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is to the Director. What's the maximum capacity we can pump out of the Macquarie River in we look at the variations, different variations there. It's been going for a while, so what's the maximum we got there? But I just want to go back onto what Councillor Taylor was talking about there. I tend to believe that, I don't have any problem with the investigation of what we can do there. But I think you've got to remember that water goes down in the Molong water supply. Not only after that, it then goes further down into the Bell River, and I think you start to get into licences of farmers and pinching water with them. So I couldn't imagine they'd be too happy, and most people in Molong are never very happy.
That's why I'm asking for the report, Mr. Chairman.
But I support the investigation because it'll show up with what the case is. But I just wondering about the capacity of what we can get out of that, because it doesn't look as though we've been going at full capacity while we're under 50%.
Further discussion? No further discussion. So, as a matter of process, do you want to add to the current recommendation the report that you've requested, Councillor Taylor? Or do you want to?
I'm happy to do that, Mr. Chairman.
So we're going to add to the recommendation the report, come back to council with regard to pumping our options for Lake Canobolas.
Lake Canobolas overflow. Is
that good? We all understand the motion now?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favour? Against? Anyone against? No one against? Unanimous. I think that's me. Just check my...
Just out of that, Mr. Chairman, and I know the Director would be aware of it, but I mean, if we could just make allowance for the fact that it would be a trigger point in place with Molong Dam, so once it reaches a certain level, that we wouldn't be able to access it, just to allay any fears that might exist if we...
Yeah, I'm sure imagine they'll put tons of conditions on it. Alrighty, that closes the infrastructure meeting at 8:03, and I'll invite Councillor Hamling to do Sport and Rec.
Councillor Whitten, I'll open the Sport and Recreation Policy Committee at 8:04. I just want to make one declaration of interest. I need to probably declare an interest, which I'm sorry I overlooked before. In the item 2.2, this will be a non-pecuniary interest. I am a coach of a Orange City junior rugby team. But as you can note in the report, most of the members that were there in the sporting committee are members of sporting teams, so it's pretty hard not to have a pecuniary interest when you're on some of these committees. I'll move on to item 2.1, which is the minutes of the Australia Day Community Committee meeting held on the 12th of August.
I'll move that, Chair.
Councillor Kidd, seconder. Seconded Councillor Turner. Any discussion?
Look, just one, if I may, Chair, just raise it now. We are looking for a few new committee persons on that. We'd love to see another councillor on it, and we'd also, if you know of anyone out there, there will be expressions of interest or whatever goes in the paper. But if anyone knows anyone that might be quite keen, if they can let us know.
Mayor, I'm quite happy to go on it if you move the venue down here to the amphitheatre in Robertson Park.
What, for Australia Day meetings?
Australia Day function.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Any other discussion? No other discussion. I'll put the minutes. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Against? Carried. Move on to item 2.2 and the recommendations on page 40. I'll have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Romano, seconded by Councillor Munro. Any discussion? No discussion. I'd just like to say one comment. It'd be really good if there was a lot of entries went into there for different clubs that were needing different sort of items. So it'd be good if we maybe somewhere down the future bump up the 50 grand to maybe a little bit more, because most of the stuff is helping our facilities anyway. So we're just putting money back into them. Maybe that's something, a discussion to have at the next budget meeting somewhere along the line.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councillor Whitten.
On that matter, do start a question through you to the CEO. Do we keep a record of the requests that weren't successful, so in case we get grant funding? I imagine you do.
We do. Yes,
Yep,
we do.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? No discussion. I'll put the minutes. All those in favour say aye or raise your hand. Against? Carried. And I'll close the Sport and Recreation Policy Committee at 8:08 and call on, sorry, the Mayor. No?
Right, I'll open the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee at 8:09. Are there any, there's no pecuniary interest. 2.1 of the minutes of the Environment Sustainability Community Committee held on the 22nd of May, and there is a recommendation on page 4.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Nugent, a seconder.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Whitten. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Item 2.2 are minutes of the Environmental Sustainability Community Committee held on the 26th of June.
I'll move the minutes, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hamling.
Councillor move.
Happy to second the minutes, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Nugent. Is there any discussion on that item? If there isn't, I'll put the motion. All in favour, show of hands, please. Against? Thank you. Unanimous. Item 2.3 are minutes of the Companion Animals Community Committee of the 22nd of June 2020. There's a recommendation on page 45.
Yes, happy to move the recommendations, Mr. Mayor.
Move Councillor Nugent, a seconder. Councillor McRae. Is there any discussion on this item? If there's not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Hands up, please. Against? Thank you. Thank you, Council. That concludes the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee meeting, with the time being, I think, about 8:10. Okay, forget. I now call on Councillor Whitten to conduct the Finance Policy Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Hamling, did you have a question for the Mayor?
I'll ask the CEO later.
The Finance Policy Committee at 8:08. Are there any pecuniary interests in this particular committee meeting? There are none. Move on to item 2.1, request for financial assistance, Nobles Endurance Riders Club, Matter Stables Bullio Cup event. Mover.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Been moved by Councillor Nugent, seconded by Councillor Turner. Any discussion on this matter?
Question, Mr. Chairman. It'd be interesting to get a report back on this one, as to see what the contestants and where they actually live and all those type of things. Totally in Cabon area. But I would hope to think that maybe even the horse riders out around Clifton Grove and Spring Hill and those areas are involved in it. But it'd be interesting to see how many of them are our residents that go there, because, I mean, we're offering the same amount of money as Cabon, and it's really a Cabon event.
Any further discussion? There being no discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Against. The motion is carried. That's the end of that section. I'll close the meeting. The Financial Committee at 8:09. And I will ask Councillor Scott Munro to chair the Services Committee.
Councillor Whitten, I'd like to open the Services, excuse me, I'd like to open the Services Policy Committee meeting on the 1st of September 2020 at 12 minutes past. Is there any direct declarations of interest regarding this policy? I understand not. I'd like to item 2.1, minutes of the NAIDOC community.
Happy to move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whitten. Is there any discussion on the? No. Thank you.
Need to.
Sorry, is there any? Yeah, sorry. Is there any discussion? Want to vote on it? Please.
Aye.
Over.
All those in favour? Aye. Unanimous. Thank you. Item 2.2, minutes of the Clifton Grove Community Committee meeting held on the 5th.
Been moved by Councillor Joe McRae.
McRae, thank you. Seconded by? Thank you very much. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, just a question, if I may. I contacted the CEO a week or a couple of weeks ago. It's the second time, and anyhow, staff followed up with it. There's a place in Fawcett Ridge, and I mentioned this before, that's got more cattle on it and sheep on it than a person would have 200 acres, or if you like, 80 odd hectares around Orange. It wouldn't be 2 hectares of property, and holy dooly. And with all that rain and that, it was just all mud. And also on that property, it looks though there's a clearance sale about to start. There's cattle yards, there's horse yards, there's sheep yards, there's tractors, there's all sorts of equipment. And I've had several people, I don't know if Councillor McRae has been in discussion at if it's come up at meetings or not, but certainly most of the people have had contact me live along that Fawcett, I think it's Fawcett Ridge Drive or Lane or cul-de-sac or whatever it is. But the 3 or 4 calls I got were all from Fawcett Ridge. Can we pull out, there is, I know, certain regs on Clifton Grove on what livestock you can actually have. I know you're not allowed to have a bull and all this sort of business. But can we pull that out to just have a look at what the stock numbers are that you can have, and any other sort of restrictions are on there, please?
Yeah, well, we can organise that.
Yep. Mr. Chair, there's an inquiry of sorts underway.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd say they won't be there long. They'll starve anyway if they're not getting lot fed. Okay, put the motion. Show of hands, please. Against? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the Services Policy Committee meeting at the past. Thank you very much, Councillor Kidd.
Thanks, Councillor Munro. The council meeting now resumes at 8:13. Item 4, notices of motion, notices of rescission. First of all, we have 4.1 as a notice of motion, and that's proposed entrance sign Bathurst Road.
Happy to move it, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
It's moved Councillor Duffy, seconded Councillor Munro. I think, yes.
Chairman, I'm quite happy to move this. This is I believe this is to be a better site with the ambience of the ambience of coming into the actual town. If you look at the NDR in the Southern Distributor Road, or whatever you want to call it, they're going to be going around the city, and most of the traffic is going to be going, especially on the way through to Dubbo, is not really coming into Orange. If you go into a lot of centres and a lot of other country towns and things like that, even Adelaide itself, the welcome sign is into the actual city itself, not just on the outskirts of what the area is. To me, it's basically all about the ambience of the area and making it more presentable. I'm not complaining about the design of the building or whatever it is, or the construction. I'm saying at the ambience of the area, and it is the actual gateway to the city is what we've actually called it. And I think it's just an addition there that will be far better service to the people of the city as well. But the very last bit there is it's a motion that says, well, look, okay, if we pass it, let the general manager get on and do the job, and let's get it finished. And that's basically what I'm looking at. But as I said, you look at other places like Bathurst and like when I travelled through to Brisbane the other week, I mean, nearly every town had one in the actual town instead of way out on the edges like Millmerran and all those places. So it's nothing new. So I think it's the image of the area there. And I've had discussions with the general managers where we thought it should go there. And I know that the staff have made comments there as regards to where it should be. They'd have to do a study there. Well, I'd imagine they do a study no matter where they put it. So that's what I think is a far better spot for it.
If I may speak next, look, there was a fair bit of discussion about this at Park Street Trees and Waterways Committee, and it was felt if, for instance, when we do have, if you like, the southern distributor, which is mainly going to be a distribution road, which would be people possibly coming into Orange, and they'll turn off to their right in all sorts of directions. They might be going to, they might be going to the left to the hospital, they could be going to the sporting grounds, the sporting precinct, or they could be turning right at a number of other places to go into our CBD, to church or whatever it may be, rather than going straight into town. And I think if you look, the other way, again, on the Northern Distributor Road, a lot of people go on the Northern Distributor Road, may go to Bunnings or shop up in that northern shopping centre, or go to the Big Mac or whatever, or go to the sport at Waratahs, and possibly, and I would say a lot of them would still go into town. So I'm just thinking, and what the discussion was about at that Park Street Trees and Waterways is trying to capture as many people as we possibly can coming into. Some might be going through the fringes of our beautiful city. Councillor McRae.
I'll speak against the motion. We've already addressed that Lucknow is one point which sees the maximum amount of traffic coming into Orange. I would think that a welcome to Orange sign should be at a point where all of the maximum amount of traffic, visitors and residents returning would see it. This doesn't strike me as that location because of the way that Orange has grown. I can understand the sentiment that it is a lovely spot. We often do see people stop there taking their photos with the cutout cows, enjoying the lovely autumn trees, but it's not a spot that people will drive past in as large numbers as the previous discussed location, which is on that corner near the Northern Distributor Road and the highway. And indeed, in terms of people's decisions about which way they will enter Orange, I think most of them will follow whichever way their navigation system tells them to, which is going to be whichever route it decides, not what they feel like and whether they know Orange well enough to know that they want to head down the main street and enjoy all the traffic lights and the ambience and stop at the Robertson Park and the Cook Park. They might be directed to their closest route to their relative's house via the Northern Distributor or the future Southern Feeder Road as it extends into our new developments. So for me, this seems unnecessary, as we've already had a large amount of time, effort, and indeed the effort of the Parks, Trees and Waterways Committee in putting to us a design at a location which they've discussed for, I think, a fair amount of time. It's been dragging on for a while now. This just puts us, I think, back to another point of a review of a new design and indeed misses most of the traffic, which is the whole point of the thing. When I drive into Bathurst, I do note that they have a Bathurst sign in a prominent location, and it's at a roundabout, which is then the first distribution point for most of the traffic coming from the west into Bathurst. It's a really logical point to put it. It's where then most of the traffic divides. We've got the opportunity to, when it eventually comes back, look at the previous design and location we had. This is new. It's starting from scratch. I don't think it's necessary. Lovely spot. But it shouldn't be the entry sign for Orange, in my opinion. I'll be voting against the motion.
I'd like to move an amendment that the signage go where it was originally moved that it actually go, just in case the motion doesn't get up and we won't have anything to do at all. So I'll put an amendment that the signage, the sign, the Welcome to Orange sign, go up as you come into Orange, where before you get to the, so if someone...
I'll second the amendment.
Is that Councillor Hamling, I
Yep.
think? Yeah, Councillor Hamling. Any other speakers?
Mayor.
That's Councillor Nugent, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Or Councillor Duffy?
Councillor Nugent speaking. So the yeah, look, I agree. I'm happy to support the amendment on the basis of process. As we've already said, it's it's already been said. It's been through the Parks, Trees and Waterways quite extensively and discussed. This is a recommendation put forward. Secondly, the issue of the traffic, missing the traffic going on the Northern Distributor and on the Southern Feeder Road. I understand the sentiment, as other speakers have said, and I know Councillor Romano and Councillor Crevatera put up a motion about having a stopping area, a rest area, sort of roughly in that area. So I think what is needed is not to move this sign, but to have something there in the location that Councillor Duffy's identified, which perhaps has a little bit more information about what people can do in Orange. They can pull over, they can stop, they can take photos with the cut-out cows, and they can get information about what's available to them in Orange. So something, I understand the sentiment, and maybe what we need is something different there, but I think the sign should stay where it's currently proposed. So I support the amendment.
Mr Mayor, yeah, I'll speak to the amendment, but one part of Councillor Duffy's motion, which I do support, is commence installation as soon as possible.
Yep.
So, yeah,
I'll put that in. I'll put that in the amendment.
In the amendment,
right?
yeah, that'd be great. I'll sit down.
Plagiarism.
Councillor Turn.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Speaking strongly against the motion in the first place and supporting the amendment.
I'll withdraw my motion, Mr Chairman, and support your amendment.
I'll still speak to against the motion. Like I live out of Clifton Grove, and there's 20 or 30% of the population of Orange now uses the NDR if they're coming from Sydney or Bathurst or whatever, coming from the east. 20 or 30% of the population of Orange NDR to access their homes. Also, all the visitors are not staying in Orange that go on to Forbes and Dubbo and beyond. 99% of those will use the NDR, especially after once the big new truck stop stopped, and there's even more option there for getting petrol and fast food, etc., etc. So for all those people that are going on, not staying in Orange, going on to Forbes and Dubbo and beyond, they have no welcome to Orange whatsoever, other than a vague Orange shopping centre, I believe, up on Anson Street. About the only indication that they're actually in Orange. Maybe it's on the service station or what, I'm not quite sure. So let's leave it where we proposed in the first place, at the junction of Bathurst Road and the NDR, so that everyone can see it and everyone is welcome to come into Orange.
Look, if I may, just to close the debate also, we're still looking at if we can get funding and that, looking at the possibility of a rest area in this area here, unless I'm incorrect, and that was moved by, I think, Councillor late Crevatera and Councillor Romano. And I think if we can get the funding, aren't we looking at a rest area in this area?
Correct. Move we put the amendment.
Yep, okay. I'll put the amendment. All in favour? Show of hands, please. Is there anyone against the amendment? No.
Councillor Duffy.
Councillor Duffy's against it.
All right. The amendment comes a motion. All in favour? Show of hands, please.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Motion item 4.2 is working with children and police checks for councillors. Councillor Munro.
Happy to second that.
Moved Councillor Munro, seconded Councillor Duffy. Thanks, Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Councillor Kidd. Look, I think this is really important. And as much as we'll vote for it this evening, councillors, and hopefully it'll be endorsed by us. But truly, the true worth will be when it gets to the conference, when it gets to the conference of the LGA, and all people that are able to vote on it and make the decision. I think for me, over my tenure as a councillor, there's been many times where you've been to a sporting event or a whatever, and you are, and you go to schools and you have it's very important. The number one thing for me is the children's check. That is so important. We do deal with children. We do come in contact in this sphere. We do debating and things like that and all that. And as much as we aren't in charge of that child or that group of children, the teachers are with them and all, we still, in this position as a councillor, I think an honourable one. It's a very honourable one. And when you think of the normal job, the way you go for jobs, and you have to put your CV and everything, it's a requirement. It's a requirement for 99% of things. Check, it's so important that we have people here that are credible all over our council in New South Wales, that they're checked. Everyone can make a mistake. I understand that, but the Electoral Commission will work that out. Just feel very strongly about this. I've got the support of Linda Scott, the President of the LGA. She's encouraged me to put this motion up. I'd like your support, please. Those open for discussion.
Mayor,
Councillor Whitten, I think it is.
Thank you. Yeah, look, Mr. Mayor, I've got no problem in supporting this this motion, but I think the CEO might put a register together of what councillors already have reference numbers.
Yeah.
Because there's probably a number of councillors that already have police checks and child protection reference numbers, because it's not a cheap exercise, and it would probably save council a fair bit of money, because I know of, well, at least 3, 4, 5, probably 6 councillors that are already, or 7, sorry, Councillor McRae, they're already got reference numbers that just need to be given to the CEO.
Thanks, Councillor Whitten. Good point. Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this concerns me for a couple of reasons. One is that it presents an additional cost barrier to people who are intending to stand for election if indeed it does pass at the local government conference and is legislated that candidates are required to submit this. And that's what I understand is the intention of the motion. So I think it presents an additional financial barrier for potential candidates, which for some people may actually preclude them from standing for local government. So that's one of my concerns. I appreciate that the President of LG New South Wales, Linda Scott, has acknowledged the process to have such a motion put forward, but that does not necessarily mean that it's endorsement. I also would be concerned that councillors are being put in positions where they are being left in responsibility for people of a young age or under 16, and that is a burden which perhaps is inappropriate. And if there have been situations where Councillor Munro has been left in such a position of responsibility, I think that is a concern. But I would also be interested in what type of police record items would preclude somebody from being a local councillor. Is it that having anything on a police record would preclude you, or is it going to be publicly released? What is the intent of having a police record check as it relates to being able to represent your community as an elected member? Now, I know that this has been brought up in the past, and I don't believe that it came through Orange City Council as being something the majority of councillors support. I understand this is a different way to try to get it through, as being a motion to go to LG New South Wales's conference. But considering the financial impact and considering that it presents an equity issue and excludes people who could be good representatives, but perhaps aren't in a position that they should be in a position, well, in a situation being solely responsible for young people, or indeed in their life have made poor decisions and ended up with a police record, should be therefore excluded or have that publicly released when they stand for a position in local government. So I understand the intent is to have people of credibility, of good ethical, of moral standards representing in local government, but I don't think this is a way to be doing it, and I think it sets an unreasonable expectation across the state if it was to be introduced.
Thanks, Councillor McRae. Any other speakers?
Councillor Duffy.
Councillor Duffy, sorry.
Right. Mr Mayor, thank you very much. I'm fully supporting this 100%. I look at a situation where as councillors we go to schools, we go to all these other organisations, there are young children there. I would tend to think that the parents and the teachers and anyone else would say, hey, have these people been checked? And not so much would they be questioning the fact, but it'd be nice to know that they are all things. As Councillor Whitten said, I think there's probably about 6 or 7 already have it. I have it already. I know that Councillor Hamming would have to have it where he works, and I know a couple of other people involved with Octec, and some of those other community organisations would have it. As I said, more of an insurance against for us as well. I mean, I tend to think that the cost of it wouldn't be all that great to council and that type of thing if council pays for it. I mean, I paid for my own, so it wasn't that great. So, you know, as I said, I don't see an issue with it whatsoever.
Councillor Turner, I think, yeah.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. More a question at this stage. I just need a clarification where it says resolved to lobby all New South Wales local government elected members as part of the pre-election process. Are we looking at all the candidates would have that check before the election day, or what I'd be more in favour of is that the candidates be aware that if they are elected, they would need to undergo that check? Because the last council election, what we had 80 candidates, 88, whatever the figure was. So if that is the case, that all potential candidates have to go through that check, I'd be voting against it. I think as against if wording was reworded slightly to say that all candidates, upon being elected, are aware that a children check, etc., would be carried out.
A clarification, Mr Mayor. Question,
Yep.
maybe Councillor Turner might be able to answer it. If we leave it to the elected representatives, as suggested by Councillor Taylor, what happens if one person fails?
By-election.
We'd have to have
If I may,
I
Mr
don't have a problem
Chairman,
with it.
Mr Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Whitten.
Look, I think this is just an assumption on my part, but it's probably they're probably trying to move down the road for local government to be like elected MPs, right? They have to have probity checks to become MPs, right? You'll probably find that's where this is going to.
Mr Mayor?
Yeah, Councillor Nugent, yep.
Yeah, look, I certainly understand the sentiment of the proposal. You know, checks and more checks to ensure that the people that are elected, you know, fit and proper persons to hold office. I do have some concerns about the kind of technical issues, the workability of it, and the necessity of it. Currently, Section 275 of the Local Government Act identifies a whole range of reasons why people can be disqualified from holding government offices, local council office. So there's already that vision in the legislation. In relation to working with children checks, the staff comment points out that being a counsellor would not be classified as child-related employment. So to get a working with children check, you normally need to be in child-related employment. And the result that you get back is say, yes, you're suitable for child-related employment, or no, you're not. So you get a check back saying you're not suitable for child-related employment, a counsellor is not child-related employment, then what, you know, I think there's some legislative issues there in terms of the workability of the proposals. So I'm not sure that it's really necessary. I do note that there's a bill before Parliament at the moment to amend the Local Government Act to, I think, to disqualify or to rule out developers and real estate agents from holding office. So that's another sort of addition to the legislation that's sort of currently before Parliament. So, I mean, this may be something which sort of quite complex and requires consideration by the state government in terms of how it would work and how it would be enforced. So, while I'm not necessarily against the sentiment, the idea, the intent, I do have some concerns about its workability.
So, point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Wait, I think Councillor Taylor beat you to it.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Look, all I want to say is, look, I'll support the motion, but I think Councillor Turner has raised a very relevant point. I think that it's included that it be a requirement upon election to a council. I think that's a lot easier to get support of, and you're not involving the Electoral Commission. I mean, if you have got it through where it would be a requirement to be a candidate, I mean, I agree with Councillor McRae. It's an undue cost to a candidate, and could exclude the cost. Simply could exclude some people. But if it is, they are conscious of the fact that if elected, they would have to undergo these checks. Well, that's a transparent process. It's there, and everyone understands what the requirements are. So I think that's very important, because I think once you put anything forward and you're involving the criteria to be part of the electoral process for inclusion or exclusion as a candidate, you're going to complicate matters significantly, and particularly involving the Electoral Commission process, which would become a requirement, I would imagine, under the Electoral Act, which would require some amendments to the Electoral Act. So I think that what Councillor Turner is relevant, that should be what we put forward if we put anything forward to the Local Government Conference.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Duffy.
Yes, my clarification is, Mr. Mayor, what would something like this do to the mayoral debate, or when we bring students in here? Like, I know that Councillor Nugent was involved in the mayoral debate and all those things. Are those kids over 18 or 16? I don't know. I think they'd be working with children.
No. Look,
come on.
No, look.
If you're going to be fair dinkum.
No, look, I think what we're looking at here, I think we're looking at a motion here, and I think Councillor Munro would change it to say, to fit in with what they're saying there, if you were elected, this would go down to local government conference, and local government conference would discuss this and then see if it gets a Guernsey or not. Now, if it got a Guernsey through the local government conference, that is a recommendation from the local government conference, and it would still have to be put in statutes, as Councillor Taylor said, through Parliament. Or the other thing that can happen, I suppose, is that Parliament or policymakers can put something up to the minister, and then they can discuss it in Parliament if they so wish to change the Local Government Act and incorporate it. So, yeah, I can support it, but I do support it with that caveat that it's for successful candidates, not for, couldn't ask 88 people to get their working with children check. And by the way, can I just finish? The Working with the Children Act, a number of us that have already got it, but just personally, I hope that we never ever get to the stage in this country that every single person that may be talking to a school group would have to have working with children check. Just imagine the Rural Fire Service going to do a demo at the school and show the kids the fire engine and that. Oh, hold it, the only ones that can go have had their children's check, or if it was the ambulance or a whole range of other service organisations that do speak to children. Councillor McRae.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Look, the situation with the Working with Children's check is that they're required where people will be as I understand it, in a situation where they're with children who do not have the supervision of either a parent or a guardian. And in most situations with school groups, a teacher is present and they have that in loco parentis role. So, look, I've been in the service organisations, a club who's chosen that all volunteers must have the working with children check. And I've also worked as an employee where all must have that employment-related check. And it also takes quite a bit of time to get those checks done. But the clarification is it's not just because you're in a room with young people. Yeah. It's actually where you are the only adult in a room with young people and there therefore is a risk. That's that element of doubt about the character, the quality, but also potential future allegations by maliciousness. So generally, school groups are going to have another adult in a situation.
Just one other thing, Mr. Mayor, just to with Councillor McRae, there is another requirement that organisations that are going for government grants, the government requires their boards of directors to have to have those same things, right? So if an organisation is going for tenders that are subject to do work with children, then the directors have to be covered,
Yeah. Look, Councillor Munro, would you like to close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I agree. I don't mind changing the motion to fit in with debate in regards to as Councillor Turner discussed. So is that okay to do that?
What's the wording?
I can read
it
as
it was.
As a second, I'm happy with that.
I'm going to read the wording as I see it,
please.
Chair. Mr. Councillor Munro. So it would just be merely that Orange Council resolved to lobby for all New South Wales local government elected members to provide a current working with children and police check once elected.
Once elected, yep.
Number
that's
2
fine
stays the same. Yep.
Because people that are going for election know that they're going to be scrutinised anyway, so I agree with that. So, and you know what? I can't believe that we're getting any pushback on this as far as, that's just my opinion, that anyone would say no to a working with children's check or a police check if they've got nothing to hide. Here, as public representatives, we're trusted by our community to be of sound character and the rest of it. It perplexes me to have any negative debate against it, other than what was brought up by Councillor Turner. So
Councillor Munro, I don't think anyone is pushing back or against it or anything. They're just trying to help you with the wording to make sure it's had a chance down the local government.
We go
to close the debate.
And as elected members go down to the pool and do things to the benefit of our town. And if you were convicted once of pedophilia or anything like that, or you had got dismissed in some way, or you had some sort of a record, that we know as elected other representatives of council that, you know, we've got a good council and a good New South Wales.
Point of order.
That's so important.
Point of order, Councillor Hanley.
Go. Let him go.
I agree with but it would not be public knowledge that every councillor would know what every other councillor's.
It's covered under the Privacy Act. It's covered under. It's not allowed to be spoken about.
Most, I put it that we put it.
He's allowed to close the debate, irrespective of what he says.
Thank you, councillors. I would love your support on this. It's going to be debated at the LGA conference. Yep. It's not really our decision. Let it be the majority of councils in New South Wales that makes this decision. Please give me the opportunity to put the motion or have the motion put at that conference so that we can change things, so we can improve things.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour, show of hands, please.
Unanimous.
Against?
Thank you.
Passed. Right, we now move on to section 5, which is general reports. And first of all, we have 5.1, which is the election of the deputy mayor. Now, first of all, we have the term of the Deputy Mayor. The recommendation is for 1 year to the next council elections, which are in September 2021. I think it's whatever date. So first of all, we need a resolution to elect a Deputy Mayor and for that term, please.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Move Councillor Hamling. Councillor
Seconded.
Romano.
All in favour? Thank you. Against anyone? Right. Now, recommendation 2 we have to look at is the method of voting.
I'll move it to be show of hands, Mr Mayor.
Right. And can I just say there's 3 methodologies. There's recommendation is for ordinary ballot. That's a secret ballot where the names or kens are written on a ballot paper. Second is open ballot. That's conducted by a show of hands. And the third is a preferential ballot. Councillors nominate their votes from 1 being their first preference, then 2, 3, and so on.
I'll move it amendment, Mr Chairman, that we do it by secret ballot.
Sorry, just hold a second. Councillor Whitten, you moved a motion. What was it, sorry?
The open voting policy, show of hands.
Open ballot, yep.
Open ballot, that's what I was looking for.
Sorry, Councillor Whitten. Seconder, please.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Councillor Taylor.
All councillors have to be included, so I'll second it.
Can I just ask for a point of clarification?
Wait, just wait a second, and I'll just get Councillor Duffy moved amendment. That was moved. What was that, Councillor Duffy? Please.
Secret ballot. Secret ballot.
Known as an ordinary ballot.
Ordinary ballot.
Got a seconder for that?
Can I just get clarification on the secret ballot? Thank you.
Yes.
You get a seconder first, otherwise we don't talk about it.
That isn't the recommendation.
No. The recommendation
Whatever I want. I got in first.
is one of those 3, and Councillor Whitten moved for an open ballot, and seconded by Councillor Taylor. Ordinary ballot has been moved by Councillor Duffy.
With no seconder yet.
Right. Well, I'll second it for conversation. All right. Now, Councillor Miletto, what was, sorry?
Yeah, just with regards to the process when we have 2 people on Zoom with a closed ballot, does everybody still vote, or how will that work?
I've got that, Mr Mayor, if you'd like me to. We took advice from the Office of Local Government. Put simply, if council tonight does not vote by open ballot, then we will need to defer the election, and that applies for both Deputy Mayor and the chairs of the policy committees. So with 2 councillors on Zoom, you tonight can only have an open ballot.
Thank you.
Or defer, yeah. Right, so everyone's quite clear. Any speakers, please? Councillor Whitten?
Clarification, Mr Mayor, for clarification. So what the CEO has informed us is that, and I just want this for the record, if we have an open ballot, which is a show of hands, all councillors, all 11 councillors will partake in the vote. If we have a closed vote, yourself, Mr Mayor, and Councillor McRae would be excluded. Is that correct, Mr CEO?
No, if I could. So what you said firstly is correct. Open ballot would include the 2 Zoom councillors.
Yep. Yes, that's what I said.
Yeah, and then the secret ballot or ordinary ballot cannot occur tonight because the 2 Zooms can't be included.
That's exactly what I said.
Then we would have to defer till the next meeting.
That's what I said.
Correct.
That if it was in the closed ballot, Councillor Kidd and Councillor McRae would not be allowed to participate.
No. I'm just hold on. Sorry, I've got the returning officer.
Okay, all right. Now I'm with
so, Councillor Taylor, yeah, we will not hold such a vote tonight because of the Zoom.
No,
the closed vote.
Sorry, point of clarification. You made reference to the chairs of the policy committees.
Correct.
Which is a separate item.
Correct. Just thought I'd get in there early.
We could, the mayor could be deferred, and the policy the policy committee chairs could go ahead with an open vote.
Correct.
Which is what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
I was just preempting. Same thing for both items.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak for.
Councillor Whitten, sorry.
Look at the camera. You're up there. I keep looking over there.
Good day, sorry.
Look, I speak for the recommendation that I've moved for an open vote. We're here tonight. We need to deal with the matter. The problem I see with deferring it is that we don't know when COVID's going to finish, and we don't know when we're going to have all the councillors in this room. Now, if that's the will of this council, then I'm just one person, and I will fall in the line with democracy, with the vote. But I don't see any reason why we're all here now. It's a show of hands. It's an open process, and we can deal with it, and the city can get on with a new deputy mayor or an existing deputy mayor, whatever the outcome may be. So the only downside I see is it's going. Any one of us or anything could change in the future where we're all going to be back on Zoom, or one of us are going to be back on Zoom, or I travel to Sydney and I can't come into chamber. It'll just be going on and on and on. But if that's the will of the council, that's the will of the council.
Thanks, Councillor Whitten. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I fully concur with Councillor Whitten on this. I really would be interested in hearing why we wouldn't have an open ballot. I know that it's purely been tradition that we have, but it's extenuating circumstances at the moment. You, Mr. Mayor, is through injury, are not in the room tonight, and Councillor McRae, through her choice and her occupation, believes that it's not wise for her to attend here in person, and she's on Zoom. Look, I really think we can get too carried away with this. I mean, what has anyone got? Why wouldn't we declare who we're voting for? I mean, we understand and respect each other's views on debates mainly, most of the time. Sometimes we may not, but it's the way it is in local government. I mean, some people support some people, others support others. And I think that, I really do think the public would look in an encouraging way on this. I think it's democracy, and it's democracy at work. And I really think deferring this is a retrograde step. We need to elect a deputy mayor tonight. We need to elect our chairs and get on with the job that we were elected for 3 years ago. That is to run the city. So I really am at a loss because it is such extenuating circumstances. I'm really at a loss to see why anyone would oppose an open ballot.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Any other speakers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Duffy.
Councillor Duffy.
The line of democracy. One of the democracies is written down in white in the act of what we've got to do. That's the line of democracy. It doesn't allow for this extenuating circumstances.
Must do, because we're doing it tonight.
I'm not saying that. Now, I'm not saying that someone could be injured, they could be away next meeting, it could be it can happen any time. But even if we put it off for another month or whatever the case may be, we still have a deputy mayor that's been elected previously. It doesn't say we have to have one tonight or tomorrow or the next day. And as for, I can understand people wanting to be in their choice to be away. Listen, I can tell you now, I have 80 students on my bus. Not all, some are 18, some are 15, 16, 17. Social distance is certain things, but other things, it is a social issue problem. As I said, I can't work out why we can't all be in the room. I can understand people having a choice. Good luck to them. But as I said, this is probably, can someone tell me in this room, and probably Councillor Kidd, you've been here probably just as long as what Councillor Turner has. When was the show of hands in this chamber?
Never. Not in my time.
Thank you. That's what I know. But the act doesn't allow for extenuating circumstances. I see no problem in deferring the matter.
If I can speak next, look, I have no worries with either way, but I know it's quite interesting. For 30 odd years, I've always moved for an open ballot and got a toweling. No one's ever wanted it. So I hope one thing that does happen out of this COVID, and I think we're going to pursue it anyhow, I was talking with the CEO, that things will change coming into the future. I know Councillor Whitten, myself, other people around the table for various reasons. Sometimes you have to be away for work, or you could have family matters or whatever it may be. And I think people having the opportunity to Zoom now is going to be the new norm. hate to use those words they're using, but the new norm. It's interesting that local government are pushing for postal voting to come in, right? Now, the postal voting will be quite still allow preferential voting. And one thing that I will be taking forward to the LGA and to the Minister, well, things are different. Well, we should be looking at, and it's shown that you can still have a council meeting with full participation. Why? And I can tell you, that was interesting because the CEO rang me. I thought it was quite interesting that just say any three of these methods, it doesn't really matter. Even with an ordinary ballot, secret ballot or preferential ballot, why someone on Zoom couldn't participate by having to ring into someone that says, one of the staff, for instance, that's a justice of the peace or whatever it may be, to register their votes, to put their votes in. I think that will come in the future. I mean, just imagine if they were going to have the council meeting tonight up at Baloo in Queensland and it was flooded for 6 weeks. Well, I think the future will see that they can still have a council meeting and an election without actually having to be there physically. The preference obviously is there to be physically, there's no doubt about that. So I think irrespective, I think down the track we're going to pursue this to see, that some of these changes do come in the future. Councillor McRae.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, in terms of the proposed amendment from Councillor Duffy, the statement that councillors should be required to be in the room and should be excluded from voting otherwise could be seen as being discriminatory. The insinuation that a councillor should be required to be in the room is against the current local government opportunities for councillor attendance at meetings. And I'd caution Councillor Duffy in insisting that councillors must attend in person to be allowed to vote on any matter for council. I agree that ballot options have not yet caught up with the multi-mode of meeting attendance, but I would suggest that if there is going to be a secret ballot, the voting option, the voting process needs to be the same for all councillors. Yeah. There might be suggestion that somebody could ring in or phone in or fax in or send a carrier pigeon with their vote, which might be received by a trusted member of staff. However, there are plenty of options available for electronic voting, as we see at local government New South Wales conferences using specified devices, but there are also simple options using mobile phones or tablet devices, which could be utilised if indeed we were to defer tonight, but it should be the method that is used for all councillors to vote in a secret ballot, not specific to those who are attending on Zoom. I think an open vote is the way to go. It provides some clarity, it provides surety, and it also shows our community that transparency, that leadership that particularly Councillor Munro was talking about earlier, in that who are the people who are leading this community, and that transparency in who we are, what we stand for and who we vote for. Yes, we can defer it, but the insinuation that councillors must be in the room is one that I will not be laying down on, and it would be a discriminatory statement to insist that we must attend in person while the legislation allows us to have that flexibility.
Point of clarification, Mr Mayor, point of clarification.
Councillor Duffy, I think.
Yeah, the point of clarification. The clarification is, if we did defer tonight, I would tend to think, and I'll ask this to the returning officer, that we could then some way adjust it, that people could take those options as in postal vote or text message or whatever the case may be. Is that correct, Mr GM, or returning officer?
We've been told by the office that out an open ballot, we can't do anything right now. In fact, they finished their advice by saying, but you could get your own legal advice, which was interesting. So if it is deferred, then tomorrow, that's where we'll go for any opportunity we can to get an election.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that.
I'll just speak against the motion, Mr Mayor. The amendment,
Thanks,
sorry. Speak against the amendment. I'll get my terminology correct. Look, it's about transparency to the community, and they're going to be asking why we just didn't have an open vote, and why we're deferring it to a closed vote. There's already millions of conspiracies in the community at the moment about this process, and we're just adding to it if we don't deal with it tonight. And certainly, I agree with Councillor McRae. I respect every individual in this room, and I respect their right to, if they don't feel that they're safe to be in this room, and they wish to do it and use the local government's tools to allow them to participate as a duly elected member of this council on a Zoom, they have that sole right to do that.
Thanks, Councillor Whitten. Look, I don't think there's anyone else wants to speak. Look, I'll just put the amendment first. All in favour?
Amendment is to do it closed.
Against? Sorry. Show of hands, you've got those, Mr.
It's
CEO.
against the amendment.
Lost.
It's only Councillor Duffy has voted for the amendment.
Not only.
To clarify, Mr. Mayor, the vote is successful to against the amendment. Against the amendment.
Yeah. So the form of vote, I'll put the motion. That's the open ballot conducted by show of hands. All in favour? Hands, please. Against? Thank you very much for that. Can I just have a resolution that the Chief Executive Officer...
Mr. Chairman, can I have a matter arising, but I want to bring it up after the election? Is that okay?
Yeah, if you like. Yeah, okay.
After the elections are done, I want to raise
it. I need a resolution that Chief Executive Officer act
Happy
as
to move, Mr. Mayor.
and conduct the election. Who moved
Happy
that?
to move, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nugent.
Councillor seconded, Councillor Munro, I think it was. All in favour? Aye. Against?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'll take over from here.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. So just to summarise, we are now going to vote for Deputy Mayor for a term to September 2021 in the form of an open ballot. I'll be assisted by Ms. Constantine Davis. Bear with us. So, councillors, we're going to open the ballot box and put the nominations on the table. We'll confirm the box is then empty. I was going to... I'll read out the nominations. They come out and we will make a list in that order. So for Deputy Mayor, we have Councillor Kevin Duffy, and he has a requisite 2 nominators. And I would like to ask Councillor Duffy whether he accepts that nomination.
Was the answer yes or no?
He has, Councillor Duffy has accepted the nomination.
Yes, sorry, we couldn't hear it.
Sorry, I can't. We have a nomination for Councillor Scott Munro, which has the requisite 2 nominators.
Yep.
That's our second candidate. Do you accept that nomination,
Yes,
Councillor Munro? That's a committee chair nomination. We have a nomination for Deputy Mayor by Councillor Glenn Taylor, who has the requisite 2 nominators. Councillor Taylor, do you accept that nomination? That's a committee chair. And we have a nomination for Councillor Tony Miletto for Deputy Mayor with the requisite 2 signatures. Do you accept that nomination, Councillor Miletto?
Yes, I do.
Box is empty. So we have our list of... Could you read them out, Ms Constantine?
Firstly, we have Councillor Kevin Duffy, Councillor Scott Munro, Councillor Glenn Taylor and Councillor Tony Miletto.
Do I have any further nominations from any councillors which would require the requisite 2 nominators? There are no others. So we have a list of 4 candidates. Now what we're going to do here, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Constantine, is have a show of hands. We'll go through the 4 candidates and ask for shows of hands for each candidate. I'll then, after that, tell you what happens at that point. Councillors who will be voting, please. Show of hands for Councillor Kevin Duffy.
Please note 2 hands, Mr. Chairman.
How many times can you vote with...
Go through the rounds like we do.
Per round.
1 vote per round. Sorry.
1 vote per round. So with a secret ballot, you can... It's a case of elimination. Same thing here. So not to leave him on his own, I might support him on this one.
We've got 2 votes. Okay. Councillor Scott Munro.
Can't vote for him either.
Twice this. We have 1 vote. Councillor Glenn Taylor. I'm not looking at the screen. Those on the screen have not yet voted. Can I just confirm that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, show of hands. 1, 2, 3. And Councillor Tony Miletto. Show of hands, please. We've got 2 on screen. 3, 4, 5. Make sense? They add up. So, councillors, at this point, the lowest number is with Councillor Scott Munro. So Councillor Munro is removed from the contest. And we repeat the exercise for the 3 remaining candidates, Kevin Duffy, Glenn Taylor and Tony Miletto. So round 2 will commence. Could I ask for a show of hands for Councillor Kevin Duffy? I have 1 vote for Councillor Duffy. Councillor Glenn Taylor. Four votes. Councillor Tony Miletto. 5 votes. Councillor
Is that 11 votes?
No, that's not 11 votes. We need to clarify that again. I'll go through it again. Councillor Kevin Duffy. Vote. Help me out, scrutineers. Councillor Glenn Taylor. 1, 2, 3, 4 votes. I confirm your vote on that, Councillor Kidd?
Yep.
Yep, that's 5 votes. Yes. And Councillor Tony Miletto. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 votes.
5 you got.
5 votes. 5 votes. Okay, so Councillor Duffy is eliminated from the contest. Yeah. So round 3 is the final round between Councillor Glenn Taylor and Councillor Tony Miletto. Could I ask for a show of hands, please, for Councillor Glenn Taylor? Five. Scrutineers, 5. And Councillor Tony Miletto. do that. Keep your hands up. I'm doing it again. Councillor Kidd, have you voted?
Yeah,
Your vote was for?
Glenn Taylor.
Right. I'm going to start this again.
Well, I'll tell you what, now listen, keep your eye on the screens and the people there. I have to do it as chairing the meeting. Jeez.
Yeah.
Grumpy
up,
tablets?
Councillor Kidd.
Some grumpy tablets?
Oh, well, come on.
Niers, do you have Tony Miletto for 5 votes? Okay, I'm going to ask we re-vote. We are not clear here. This is difficult with the Zoom. I appreciate that. We're going to do this again. Third round. 2 candidates, Councillor Glenn Taylor, Councillor Tony Miletto. Can you Niers come up here? Thanks. Councillor, show of hands, councillors, for Councillor Glenn Taylor. Four. 6 votes for Councillor Taylor. 6. Councillor, show of hands for Councillor Tony Miletto. Five votes. 3. So the contest, 1 by Councillor Glenn Taylor. Congratulations, Councillor Taylor. You are Deputy Mayor. You accept that, obviously, yes.
Sorry, Councillor Miletto.
Yep. Councillors, thank you. We're now going to conduct the election of policy committee chairs in the same manner. Bear with us. We have, as you know, sorry, I'm corrected. Mr. Mayor, you need to go through the term question again and the method of voting question again and the returning officer question again. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, councillors, and thank you all to all of those who put their names forward for the position of Deputy Mayor. And congratulations to Councillor Taylor for his election as Deputy Mayor for this coming term. We now adjourn for the conduct of for the policy committee meetings, which will be for 1 year until the council elections in 2021. So I need a mover that it will be for 1 term.
Happy to move that, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nugent.
Seconder.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Second, whoever that was. All in favour?
Councillor Hamling.
Thanks, Councillor Hamling. Now, the method of voting, it's either ordinary ballot, open ballot or preferential ballot. I need a mover.
Move it, the open ballot.
Move ballot. Is that Councillor Nugent?
Duffy. No.
Councillor Duffy. Seconder?
Councillor Turner.
Councillor Turner. All in favour?
Right.
Aye. Against. Thank you. Now, do we have, I haven't got that list in front of me. Can you just go through the list, please? Are we going in order, Planning and Development Policy Committee first?
We would. So we're going open ballot and you've resolved me. Can you just go?
Yep.
We'll just call out the order, Mr. Mayor, in a second.
Don't go in order, yep.
We'll go Planning and Development.
Employment and Economic Development.
And you have some nominations that were in the ballot box.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, we do. I'm about to go through those, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so thank you, councillors. We'll go through these. I'll just check the nominations that are in the box. The box contains a nomination from Tony Miletto for Employment and Economic Development Policy Committee, and he has the requisite 2 nominators.
Yep.
we have Councillor Stephen Nugent for Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee, and he has the requisite 2 nominators. So we'll come back to those as we go through the committees.
Yep.
So we will start.
With planning.
The box is empty. We will now start with planning and development.
So we need a nominator and seconders, please.
I'll nominate
Councillor Turner.
We have Councillor Turner nominated.
Seconder for that, please.
Seconder. Councillor Miletto.
Councillor Miletto. Any other nominations? There'll be, if there are no other nominations, I declare Councillor Turner as Chairman of Planning and Development Policy Committee.
Congratulations, Russ.
Congratulations.
Employment and Economic Development Committee, we have a nomination.
I'll nominate Councillor Miletto.
We have a seconder for Councillor Miletto.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Taylor. Any other nominations?
Being no other nominations, I declare Councillor Miletto the Chair. Thank you. Infrastructure Policy Committee.
Nominate Councillor Whitten.
Second.
Nominate Councillor Romano.
So
Councillor Romano.
We've got nominations for Councillor Whitten, a seconder for Councillor Whitten.
I did.
Councillor Nugent.
I'll decline.
Councillor Romano is declining the nomination.
Thank you, Councillor Munro, but I'll decline. Thank you.
We have one candidate, Mr Mayor, which is Councillor
Whitten. I declare Councillor Whitten Chair of Infrastructure Policy Committee. Thank you, Councillor Whitten. Sport and Recreation Policy Committee.
Nominate Councillor Hamling.
Second it.
Move Councillor Nugent. Seconder was Councillor Munro, I think. Are there any further nominations? If there's not, I declare Councillor Hamling Chair of the Sport and Recreation Policy Committee. Where are we? Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee, we have a nomination for Councillor Nugent.
Yep, a written nomination.
Yeah. Who was the seconder? There was 2 signatures you said there, wasn't it?
Councillor McRae was
McRae and Councillor Miletto has just seconded that as well. So.
Yep. Have no other nominations. All in favour? Thank you. I declare Councillor Nugent the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee Chairperson. Thanks, Stephen. Councillor Nugent, I should say. Finance Policy Committee.
I'll nominate Councillor Duffy with numbers.
Second that.
Seconded Councillor Munro.
So it's moved and seconded. Do we have any other nominations?
Oh, yeah, the lot.
No, Mr Mayor. There are no other nominations.
All in favour of Councillor Duffy? Aye. The Finance Policy Committee Chairperson is Councillor Duffy. Thank you. We go down to the Services Policy Committee.
I'll nominate Councillor Romano.
Moved Councillor Romano.
Nominate Councillor McRae.
Thank you, councillors, but I'll decline. Thank you.
Councillor Romano declines.
Nominate Councillor McRae.
Councillor Munro.
We've got a nomination for Councillor McRae.
Slow down a little bit. Councillor McRae
No, thank you. I will decline.
is declined.
Nominate Councillor Munro.
Councillor Munro is nominated.
Councillor Munro, do we have a seconder for that, please?
I'll second it. I do it? Or?
I'll second it.
I think you can. I think you can.
I was going to do it.
I'll second it just for
Rightio.
brevity purposes.
Seconded by Councillor Whitten.
All right. All in favour? Aye. Hands, thank you. Declare Councillor Munro the Chair of the Services Policy Committee. Thank you very much for all those persons putting their hand forward. And as we know, under all of those committees, there are a number of community advisory committees and other committees. So form a very, very important role. Now, Councillor Duffy, you wanted to ask a question or something when we finish the voting for Deputy Mayor and Policy Committee.
In situations like we have here, I think it's probably appropriate that we try and get the general manager to come back with or the CEO to come back with a recommendation that we can take to local government in New South Wales to address issues like we have in this pandemic situation here, because I think it's got to be addressed by the department and the state government as well. And I think it's probably if we do something like that. I don't have a problem with postal voting. I don't have a problem with texting somehow or whatever the case may be. But I do think the matter needs to be addressed.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Look, I'll endorse that completely. As I said, I spoke with the CEO today, and certainly I'm only too happy to take it forward, because I think we will see things differently. I do think the next council elections, it will open it up for a lot of younger people that perhaps got families and careers and a whole host of other reasons where it's difficult to attend every meeting for whatever reason it may be. But certainly Zoom has worked, and we've proved as a council it has worked. And it's happening right across the state and in other states. And yeah, I think we can go forward with some ideas, and it may find a lot more attractive to more people coming forward to run for local government. I think as long as you get the same result, let's go for it. So I'm only too happy to work in conjunction with the Chief Executive Officer and perhaps get a draft out to all councillors for some input, which we'd like your input into, and then bring something back perhaps to the next council meeting so we can forward it. How's that?
My resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support that. I think, there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from the whole COVID experience in terms of representative democracy, and I think we should be putting something forward to local government New South Wales. I guess just a question. Do we have a time frame for other motions that councillors might want to put forward for Orange City Council to send to the Local Government New South Wales Conference?
Councillor Nugent, I'm fairly sure the cut-off has already come, because it'll be a virtual meeting, but we can check that tomorrow. What I'm talking about with this other stuff, we'll take it forward to Local Government New South Wales, not as to the Local Government Conference and to the Minister, I think. But we'll certainly find out tomorrow if that's still open for an emergency motion or whatever, and let you know.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick one. It's about time. I think it's probably a rewrite of the rules and regulations now that some of the where you have to attend in face by turning up and being here present. Because I know a few years ago I was away for work and I asked that question, and I suppose now that we've had this, let's hope that the Local Government Association are looking at updating the rules and regulations using the technology. So, I totally agree with Councillor Duffy, and I'm sure they'd be doing it. We're not the first ones that have probably risen this around the state, surely.
Yeah, well, they're doing it in federal parliament at the moment, but I'm not sure what way they're voting. Actually, someone may know. I don't know
which way they vote anyway.
All right, thanks for that. Item 5.3 is the event approval process, COVID-19 restrictions on.
Are we dealing with these one at a time, Mr. Mayor?
I'm in your hands.
First two. We should deal with the first two, Mr. Mayor.
I agree.
Okay. I'm in your hands, as I said.
I have a question regarding this item. I think we got an email today regarding a replacement of dates. I just wanted to confirm that I have got that right in relation to the particular event, which is part of this, which is the item 3, that they've requested it now for the 28th and 29th of November. I just want to check that I have got that right, and that's what we'll be determining.
Mr. Chair, through you, that is correct. 28, 29 November, and they would bump in, as they say, on the 26th. So councillors were issued with a replacement page 60. Yeah, sort of tab. That's the one. Yep.
Yep.
To deal with
Right.
this, councillor, others deal with 1 and 2 and leave 3.
Well, do you want to go through them in seriatim?
Yes.
I'll move that we go through them in seriatim.
Second that.
Second.
Big word.
Third.
We've got a seconder?
Yes.
No.
Whitten.
Oh, Councillor Whitten, did you second that?
Mr Mayor.
Don't ask me to spell it. All in favour? Hands, please. Against, okay, we'll go through, first of all, number 1.
Move it.
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? If there's not, all in favour, show of hands, please.
Unanimous.
Number 2, to temporarily modify the strategic policy.
Move it.
Seconded.
Second,
Yeah, councillor Hamling.
Sorry,
Any
Councillor Crowe.
all in favour, show of hands, please. Against? Thank you. And number 3.
Chairman, I'd like to move that we not allow Orange Fun Fair hosted by ACE Orange Showground.
Discussion.
Do we have a seconder for
I'll
that?
second it for discussion, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hamling.
That was Councillor Hamling. Thank you very much.
Discussion,
Councillor
Mr Mayor.
Duffy. Yep.
Spoken in this chamber a number of times about congratulating those organisations that took them, as far as I'm concerned, took the right decision in stopping people coming to here that could be coming from areas that are infested or infected or whatever the correct word is to use, those type of things there. And this organisation is coming out of Sydney, Hornsby. And not only that, they're probably travelling around anywhere and everywhere, and we have no idea where they go and no things in place of what's actually happening. As I said before, the Orange Vineyard Association, take me hat off to them. The Millthorpe Markets, take me hat off to them. Everyone that's doing this. I have been inundated with messages on Facebook, messages from my phone and phone calls of people saying, hey, don't let this happen. And it's mainly from middle-aged people who have elderly parents that are still alive and those type of things there. So they're really concerned about that. And one of the things that I found quite amazing was the issue was someone mentioned, and a friend of mine mentioned, he said, in Florida, where there's no social distancing or no restrictions, same population of Australia, 11,000 deaths. Australia, we've had about 400 to 500. I'm not quite the exact figure. So that shows that our isolation system is working. There are flaws in it, of course there is. But this is an opportunity for us to say no, as did the Show Society itself when they canned their show and those type of things there, and show some protection and support for our local community and their welfare.
Thanks, Councillor Duffy. Councillor McRae.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This has been an interesting one for me to consider. Last meeting I spoke about how basically the regulations, the policies should be what guides us. This would be a permissible activity. It's a business that's permitted to operate in New South Wales, and they've got, you know, a COVID safe plan. However, my gut is telling me, and to be honest, my wife has said that she doesn't think this is a good idea, and I have been told by people older and wiser than me, always listen to your wife, that this is not a responsible type of activity for Orange City Council to be approving, and we do have the authority here to say no. We saw a number of it feels like not that long ago, one single person who is a resident of Orange have dinner in Sydney, and on their return to Orange turn out to be a positive case. And we saw the alarm that had in our community. My concern in this situation is we're looking at a couple of months' time and we don't have a crystal ball. We don't have a telescope to see what's on the horizon, but this is a Sydney-based business visiting and providing a 500-person event. And I think that the risks are too high. So I will agree with Councillor Duffy that this is not something I am comfortable with council approving at the moment in the current circumstances. I just don't think on balance we should be approving it. I would love to be wrong, I would love for this kind of event to go ahead and to have no COVID cases, no injuries, nobody falling off a ride, nobody squishing their hand in a Dodgem car. But I'm not confident that that's going to be the case. And I think that we have the responsibility to protect our community. There will be some who say, oh, you're being too rough, it should be allowed to run. Where's the bright, happy children laughing, squealing, cheering as they go on rides and jumping castles and Dodgems? But I am also considering the large number of people, and I agree with Councillor Duffy, there has been a significant number of community members contacting me saying this is not a good move. There is a fear, there's a hypervigilance, particularly in the health workforce, and having this kind of event by a Sydney-based business who are travelling around New South Wales, it's just got hairs all over it for me. So I'll be voting against approving this particular event at this time.
Thanks, Councillor McRae. Any other speakers?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hamling here. The word risk. That's what alarms me. The risk. We don't know. We're in the unknown with this. I'm quite happy for this to come back once COVID has gone, or there's lesser cases or whatever. I think this would be fantastic. But at the moment, being what's going on in Sydney and numerous hotspots around Sydney and some more cases popping up all over the place, more schools closing, I don't think we can put our ratepayers and especially the elderly and the people who are unwell at risk of something like this maybe coming out here.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Whitten. Speaking in support of the motion, I think we need to show some support for those local organisations who have chose to cancel their events because of this risk. And I think if we were to allow an outside organisation to come in and run, then that would be going totally against all of those events that have chosen to cancel their events because they want to protect community.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, look, I support the sentiments of the councillors here tonight as far as this is concerned. Look, now it's a difficult decision, and it's fortunately too commonplace these days. We have to make these type of decisions, but the people of Orange are welcoming that. But it really has, and we welcome visitors, and the local businesses need those visitors to help recover from when we had. And they are overall welcome to our city, but major events really do community very nervous. You, Mr. Mayor, and I know other councillors would know when we had. There was a lot of texts that I received and phone calls. Difficult times, and we have to make difficult decisions. Type of events. I mean, as we've seen with the Orange Wine Fair, it's all itself. Councillor Duffy made the call, but I think with this one we have to make the call, and we must put our locals first. Whilst we continue to welcome visitors, we need to be very mindful of the angst that does occur in the community. People who are vulnerable from COVID, I agree. I think we should alter this one.
Any other speakers? Okay, I'll put number 3. All in favour?
Councillor Munro, are you unanimous, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Matter arising, Mr. Chairman. Matter arising, Mr. Mayor. I'm a bit like the local member at the moment. I feel a bit sorry for the students who can't have a graduation, especially the ones in the west, from Bathurst West. And we all know that the COVID's come out here. It gets delivered to us from Sydney or somewhere like that. It's not local. It's not produced locally or anything like that. I'm just wondering whether we should write to the Premier and allow the Year 12 graduations to go ahead.
with restrictions, and I'm pretty sure the CEO could come up with some restrictions that we're talking about, whether it's only local people involved. Now, to give you the line of support that I said a bit earlier on, is that I have 80 students, you know, from year 12 down to kindergarten on my bus every day, and I see no difference to having 200 or 300 students in a room and celebrating their year 12 graduation, as long as they're only people from our area here in Orange. Those type of things. We're not stopping people going into the supermarkets or anything like that. They're doing the correct thing and those type of things. But the COVID-19 has come out here. It's been brought out here by people at every occasion that's happened here. It hasn't risen and transmitted from out here. So I just wanted to, I'd like to move that way, that we do send a letter of request to consider the maybe the zone, or maybe the Centrock area, or the old JO area. You know, I think it's something that's well worth supporting our young in that situation, because they are a little bit deprived, especially when they can understand the fact that the COVID-19 is not out here and it's not produced out here. It's brought to us.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hamling. Yeah, I you know, the old social distancing around the schools, you don't see much of it, and especially if we could organise somehow, if it was just the students and the teachers involved that way, without having anyone exterior coming in. It'd be a shame for them to miss out on that occasion. You know what I mean? So yeah, I support Councillor Duffy.
Councillor McRae.
It's been interesting to actually hear from a few parents who've expressed that they feel there's a lot less pressure on them with the removal of the formals. And that's the economic pressure that it puts on families for the fanciest dress and the hair and the makeup for the girls, for the suit hire or the new gear for the guys. So I actually wouldn't support that we would be opening that up as an exception. I think that our community, our young people, it is a difficult situation, but it also means that they're the same as the rest of their peers in New South Wales. And I would also have concerns about the sudden influx of Sydney dress merchants and suit hire places who are going to come and open pop-up shops to try to hit the market of Western New South Wales, who are going to be trying to spend their money if they have it. We've got an economic issue where parents perhaps are not working as much, and to suggest that they're going to still have the money to spend on what has been that rite of passage and formals is actually another aspect to consider. So I wouldn't be supportive of that. I think we need to stick with what the state legislators are doing in this case.
I see where you're coming from, Councillor McRae, but I suppose that's something for the schools to discuss, where they mightn't go down that formal dress. You know, if that's the case where we're talking about economics, they mightn't go down that formal way of before. It's different times, so they might look at other sort of ways of doing it. I don't know.
Councillor Turner, I think, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I support the motion in principle, but if we supported and then the government supported it also, are we looking at only students and teachers? Idea of it? Because, you know, as you say, you've got 80 people on the bus, but they're all young people, which are very, very low risk, apart from the old bus driver. But are we talking about
on his phone all the time?
If we allow the graduation, only the teachers, or allowing parents as well?
I don't very often give the government credit, but I do think sometimes that this government will be able to review the situation, and that's basically what we're asking for, is to review the situation for the Year 12 students to have their graduation. And they might want to put in different rules to what we're actually asking for. And I think, yeah, the government's decision. So, but all I'm doing is advocating the fact that, hang on, I think they should be able to have it, especially in regional Australia, and whether they do it on a JO basis, as in the old O-Rock or the Centrock or whatever they want to have it. But I do think it's not brought out here. It's brought out here. It's not festering out here like it is in Sydney.
Well, we can nearly have it, as we call it, west of the mountains, firstly.
Yeah. I don't trust people from Lithgow.
I'll support the motion and let the government work it
out. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Nugent. Look, I'm happy to support it because, I mean, I know the impact. Well, I can understand the impact on students, like that the whole COVID thing has had. I know it's had an impact on my daughter in her first year at uni because all of the formal activities that would normally happen have been cancelled. So it's having an impact on young people. It's having an impact on young people's mental health. And I think the stats are sort of showing that in terms of numbers of calls to Headspace and organisations like that. I guess in terms of the state government does have public health orders in place in terms of the numbers of people that can gather for activities in one place indoors, and I'd imagine that they would still require those considerations to be put in place, which would then probably limit it to students and maybe teachers or one parent each or something like that. So, but there's also events like NAIDOC Week where the awards night, which normally happens at the Orange Ex-Services Club and is an important part of NAIDOC Week, they've basically made the decision to not proceed with that because of the restrictions, which is unfortunate, I think. Ideally we would also be writing to sort of see whether we could get special exemption there. But I think let's just focus on what Councillor Duffy's put forward, and I'm happy to support it, given that the state government will exercise their judgment on it.
Thanks, Councillor Nugent. Any other speakers? If there's not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Hands, please. Against? I can't. Councillor Fraser, did you get the count there, Mr. Waddell?
I did, thank you.
Thank you. Motion is carried. Now, 5.4 is demolition of the Perry Oval Amenities Building. I'll move it,
Mr. Chairman. Second it, Mr. Mayor.
We have a move by Councillor Duffy, a seconded by Councillor Taylor. I think it was.
Yep, correct.
I visited with the director and a couple of other people. I think it was with us at the same time, and Councillor Romano. And when you walk in there, you say, "Hey, it's got to go. It's got to come down." Probably it's really sad it got neglected. That's what it is. But in saying that, my only disappointment about this, and I'm going to say it now, is because again we're talking money. We're talking money in open council. I totally believe, Mr. CEO and Mr. Mayor, that once we talk about dollars and about the cost of doing things, it should be enclosed. Commercial in confidence as far as I'm concerned, and that's what disappoints me about this. I'm not so much whinging about this one that's here, but it's the start of the whole process that did come down through that process. But as again, I support the demolition of it.
Okay. All in favour?
Oh, Councillor Taylor's on his feet, sir.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Taylor. I didn't see you there.
Mayor, just quickly, look, this is a good outcome. As you know, you attended and I attended, and Councillor Miletto attended a meeting up there with senior staff one day, and we had a look at this. We went through all the issues. We had our fair share of debates up there too. But overall, this is a good result. The Perry Oval, look, I've had some criticism from people to bringing up Perry Oval at the last minute in the budget process. Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't make no apology for that. Perry Oval is an oval that should be utilised by the community. I put forward 50,000 budget. I want to make the point, Mr. Mayor, and it's in the report here, that the 50,000 will not be touched as far as the amenities block. That is money that was secured under the region's funding, rural region's funding, and it was reported at the last meeting. So what we have allocated in the budget, Mr. Mayor, that will demolish the building. It will provide us with the funds to beautify the park, the Oval, and make it a very valued community resource. I think the community of North Orange generally should be buoyed by the decision here that we are going to go ahead with Perry Oval. It's named after Dan Perry, who was a a former Deputy Mayor of Orange, and he was a longest serving councillor on Orange City Council. And the Perry family attended the meeting, as you know, Mr Mayor, on that day, a representative, Donnie Perry. And it has major significance to the family, but also to that neighbourhood up there. And it's a quality facility. It's got cricket nets. There's a cricket pitch underneath it. I'm told we will be putting irrigation or upgrading the irrigation there. It's probably got one of the best sets of lights in Orange. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, or the equivalent of, as far as lighting is concerned. So, Mr Mayor, I make no apology. I know you've been pushing this. You've been a strong advocate for this too. I make no apologies for pushing this. I think that it's an asset that we should be beautifying and enhancing and encouraging the community to take part in, not only for sporting events, but possibly community events. But if we let them, and the only thing that disappointed me at the whole process is state that the Oval did denigrate to, and I hope it never gets back to that, but that's in the past. Let's move on to the future, and this is a big positive.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Look, if I can just say, one of the really interesting things about this is because sometimes you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You know, it was criticism, it wasn't in the budgeting process and all sorts of things like that. Well, things get overlooked, but this is a very valuable green space, and green space to me is used in different ways. Sometimes it's a sporting field, sometimes it's a golf course, sometimes it's a wetland, and a whole host of things. But I want you to have a look on page 133. If that oval isn't surrounded by the best stand of eucalypts in Orange, I'll stand on my head. And not one person's made mention of it. It's quite interesting that we get all very precious about every tree in Orange. This is the best stand of eucalypts around any green space in Orange, bar none. So I think just for that reason, I'd love to see, you know, nice little amenities building and brought back into, so, you know, a lot more people can enjoy it, whether it's just running around throwing a frisbee, sporting events, could be market days, could be a whole host of things, schools having marketing days or whatever. And I'm glad that it was brought to our attention, because something is going to be done about it. And I think, I know we're in a drought and that, and people said, but have a look at some of those aerial shots looking down. You don't have to be a greenkeeper to know that the grounds are in pretty poor nick. Okay, all in favour?
Mr Mayor, sorry, just really quickly, it's Councillor Hamling.
Yeah.
And just moving on from that, the ground has become more valuable because of the wet weather that we've had. Teams haven't been able to train on their normal grounds, so they've been looking for other grounds to train on, and Perry Oval has come to the fore with a lot of junior teams, and Orange City seniors trained on their Wednesday, Thursday last week. So, and we were able to offer that to them because we've got the good lights and the ground as well. So, and that must have been the ground because they had a win on Saturday, so it was good news.
Back to the old home ground.
And they just held on until they got home to go to the loo. That's good. All in favour? Against? Thank you. 5.5 is Orange City Future
Move
City.
the recommendation.
Recommendation, Mr Mayor.
That was moved Councillor Whitten, I think, and second Councillor Nugent, was it?
That's correct.
Thank you very, very much.
Chairman, if I can, I'm supportive of future cities, but I'm not supportive of what we actually got here in front of us. I'm supportive of the fact that we have looking at Anson Street to Summer Street, or sorry, Anson Street to Summer Street to Kite Street. I'm supportive of the fact of McNamara Street South. I'm supportive of the festoon lights. I'm supportive of the public art, and I'm the scrambling foot crossings and all those type of things there. But I'm not supportive of doing any work down here at current time in Byng Street. We don't know what the impact of what of the planetarium conservatorium has had. It was going to have on the traffic flows. I know for a fact I've seen Apple City buses parked 3 or 4 down here, and if we got down to one lane, it's going to do a huge detriment to traffic. I know that there's a bus bay up there, but it only holds about one bus, and try getting out of there Try getting out of there with one bus when you're on a roundabout of a busy street. You got Buckley's, and that's why I think that the companies have been speaking about that. But my other issue is putting it right down here in front of it here, and we look out here. Myself and yourself, Mr. Mayor, have been looking out here, and how terrible state our park and garden have been here, over here for the last 7 or 8 years. But worse than that, the business houses of Summer Street, of the CBD, have been paying a CBD upgrade rate or a levy. Now that has been going on for 50 years. 50 years. To give an example, what it is. 188 Summer Street. Don't care who owns it, whatever it is. The rate of the general rate of tax, the rate they're paying is $6,218. But of that is $1,861 something dollars to the levy. And we're going to spend all this money right down here in front of this council chamber when it should be actually spent in the actual CBD that is going to attract people to here. To Orange. The biggest problem I have with it being down there here, and I can tell you from when Councillor Chris Willis was here, we used to have these buses come up for the cherries year in, year out, and hopefully they still will come this year. But one of the things they get the bus drivers to do, and I've been on the buses when they've done that, is they get to drive up and down Clyde Street, they go down Bing Street, they go down Mart Street, across Sampson Street, Clinton Street, and they talk about our nice, beautiful, wide streets and the magnificent tree cover that we have got here. And what we're going to do here is cramp it all up. We're talking about a city that is traditionally built on a main street. We're not talking about a Bathurst, or we're not talking about a Dubbo. We're talking about a city that's traditionally, same as Crookville, Cobar. There's plenty of other places in the state that does this. But to me, I'm not going to be supportive of the resolution if it includes the work down here straight away. I think to those things that I mentioned, I'm 100% behind. Even with the Answer Street Mall, 100% behind it. But it can also be modified a bit later on, or can be taken away if it doesn't work. But there is still allows the traffic flows there. It still allows the taxis to be there, and all those type of things there. But I'm dead set against Bing Street and anything to do with narrowing Summer Street down. I just think it's so wrong. It's not funny. And I'll think about moving an amendment when I hear others talk about it.
All right, can I just ask a question of the CEO? Just with these, a number of these, they are sort of concept plans, aren't they? I mean, when we talk about the mall, etc. and so forth, and colours and things, more...
It's correct, Mr. Chair. If you took a street project like, say, Bing Street or the Anson, what we'll do under the infrastructure SEP is actually complete a design and put an REF back to council, and that would include a fair bit of community consultation. So you'll get another go at this during all of these processes.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Councillor Nugent, I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think I'm fully supportive of what's before us. It's been put together over a long period of time. There's been lots of community consultation. There was a community reference group that had 30 people on it, met extensively over a long period of time. The ideas have been sort of taken and put into the consultants report, which the staff have then taken and put into this report in three tranches. How do you pronounce that word?
Tranche.
Tranches. Three tranches. Tranche.
That's a new word.
Phase.
Dance.
Sorry?
Phase.
Phase.
I don't know. Could be.
Tranche.
Anyway.
Stage.
It's been put together as you asked, Mr. Mayor, and the CEO confirmed it. A lot of it's concept plans, which will have more detailed planning, and we'll have another go at it. This has been a work in progress, a work in the making for 3 years. I think the first notice of motion I put up when I sort of came on council back in 2017, in October 2017, was about the CBD revitalisation, and now here we are 3 years later with a fantastic proposal in front of us. I'd like to see us adopt it on the basis that it sets directions. there will be other opportunities for us as councillors to have an input into the fine detail, but let's approve it, get on with doing it. We've got $5 million in the budget this year to actually get some activity happening. And I'm sure the people of Orange, the business owners in the CBD, want to see something happen, want to see some action. So let's adopt this and get on with the program.
Thanks, Councillor Nugent. Councillor Taylor, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll be brief because it's obvious everyone is very supportive of this. I think, well, I've been here 25. You've been here longer than me. I think you've been here 31 years, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Turner would be there well past the 20 mark, with a bit of a break over the years. But
good or bad.
This is the first, and I don't know if you councillors are aware, but this is the first time in my time, and I think in yours and Councillor Turner's, that we've had a major upgrade of the CBD. That's how long it's been. I think from memory, I think the pavers were put in Summer Street in the time of Councillor Tim Sullivan when he was. That's how long back it goes. I think Tim was mayor up until 1991, 83 to 91, I think. So back in the 80s. This is the first time that CBD has been upgraded since then, and I'm sure it will be in place for many years to come. We've got our critics out there that tell us we're backward looking and we're doing nothing and we're spinning our wheels and everything. Well, this is proof that we're not. It's very enthusiastic as far as the projects we are taking on with it. But the fact of the matter is it's much needed and it will take Orange into the future, and it's much, I think, overall by the community will be appreciated. And Mr. Mayor, I might comment on some of the innovative thinking as far as the program is concerned. I was impressed with the colour range utilising Orange as a colour city with the leaves and so forth on the streets and that. And I can't wait to see some of that go in place, because a lot of people have put a lot of hard work into this. I do have some apprehension about plans with Summer Street and traffic and so forth. I've got to admit that. We can argue about Anson Street and the mall. Should it be a full mall or a part mall? But that debate has been going on for years, and now we're finally resolving those sort of debates. So I think this is wonderful news for the City of Orange, and congratulations to everyone involved and every councillor in this room and councillors before have been involved with this, and staff. Hopefully, well, this is the culmination of the planning stage. Now let's get on with it and deliver it.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. One thing we do know that we're going to be mauled over the mall, but it's time that decisions were actually made. I've seen it discussed several times over 31 years and no one would bite the bullet, but I think that's what good decision making is about. Councillor McRae, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge what Deputy Mayor Taylor has said. This is, I agree, an ambitious, it's a vision for the future, and it is something that our council can show that we have done together. It does show council to be forward-looking, and I think care for that heart of the CBD, help it beat strongly into the future, and something that, although we could argue about, I don't know, the colour of pavers, the design of garbage bins, the number of toilet cubicles in a toilet block, we have our moments. This is an example of really being forward-looking and doing something for the greater good of our community into the future. Let's not get bogged down in details of which street has, a bike path and which has a wider footpath at this point. That'll all come to us in the further details of individual projects. But overall, this is something I think we can all stand behind and be really proud of.
Thanks, Councillor McRae. Any other speakers? Councillor Whitner and I think Councillor Turner. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I agree with all the councillors. There's just one consideration that I would like staff to think about, and councillors. All in Anson Street, could we look at putting a cover, like a Perspex cover over it? Because Orange doesn't always have nice weather. And I think having a cover, if we're going to encourage people to use that mall as traffic, put one, like in Sydney, you see those Perspex covers that still lets the light come through, the warm sun rays. Encourage more use of the mall from a commercial sense. Well,
I'm sure they'll
take that on board.
I'm sure they'll look at that, Councillor Whitten. I think it's a good idea. Councillor Turner.
Mr Mayor, Councillor Whitten, you've made my night.
What have I done?
Tell you in a second. Well, you're certainly supporting the future city and the proposal, and acknowledging that, yes, the last time was, as the report said, the last time we've had a major upgrade of the CBD was the 1990s. And in between, we've had talk about closing off Anson Street and a great furore about the taxi rank, etc., and whether we make it one-way traffic or two-way traffic. Tonight, we're talking about turning part of it into a mall, stay positive, and we're talking about covering the mall, not eliminating it and deleting it from the plan. But so that's good. You've made my night. I'll support that.
Okay.
Now, also,
water.
we're going to have a bit of controversy about the taxi rank. It's good to see that it's being retained, but they won't be able to go forward. They'll have to do Uwe and go back out to Kite Street, and they'll talk about that's going to increase the cost of the passengers, etc., etc. But I think it's a pretty good compromise. Then other things that I'm supporting is, the beautification that's being carried out, the lighting that's being carried out at the moment. The report in here that shows in certain streets the hanging baskets. Any of us that have been overseas, hanging baskets brighten up the streets, brighten up the city. I think they're a great idea, and I don't know why we've waited so long. Getting back to Anson Street, this has been going on for a number of years, and in the report it talks about removing some of, sorry Mr Mayor, what are the trees, plane trees are they in Anson Street?
London Plane, Platinus hybrida.
Bum stingers.
We're talking about removing some of those because of the root system undermining some of the retail shops there, so that will again create a debate. But once I'm quite confident that once we upgrade Anson Street and upgrade other parts of the city, it'll give the city, give people more confidence in CBD, which again may help attract a developer that wants to develop the Woolworths car park. Everyone says we need to upgrade the Woolworths car park and multi-deck it, etc., but we haven't been able to get a financial developer to do so. Well, I've always maintained that it will be viable with shops, parking, whether we have one or two underground or whatever it might be, it'll see what the developer comes up with. But have apartments on the top. You've got open deck car park, the last car space on that open deck car park, the one that's in the sun and in the weather. They all want to park their cars underneath. Make it more viable as well for a developer to have inner city apartments on the top floor. A lot of attraction to it. You might even put 2 floors on top, I don't know. But by upgrading the CBD, I think you will give a developer more confidence in the future of the CBD, and we might get some attraction or some developer to come along and come up with a plan that we will accept is viable to the developer and makes everyone that uses that car park happy, because as anyone that uses it, it doesn't take too much to have that car park virtually at capacity. See people driving around waiting for someone to leave, etc., etc. So I think somewhere down the track we're going to get a multi-car park, and the beautification of the CBD is going to help get the developers that are interested in doing so.
Thanks, Councillor Turner. If there's no other speakers, in favour.
No, Mr Mayor, I just want a clarification. I want a clarification to the CEO. Is there a format in which this work is going to be carried out? I'm supportive of it, don't worry about that, but I'm not supportive of doing down here straight away in front of Council's chambers. Supportive of all the other stuff that I mentioned straight away first, but not this stuff down here. Don't know what the impacts are.
The format, as proposed in the recommendation, is to do tranche 1 first and tranche 2 second. We're asking you to approve both those tonight. If you don't want to do the Bing Street play, you'd have to have an amendment to say that council adopt tranche 1 and 2 as per the detail of the report with, for example, Byng Street pushed to year 3, tranche 3. Otherwise, we would proceed with Byng Street either year 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Is that right, Mr. Redmond? Year 2. But we will be doing things before Byng Street is done.
Yes.
I
We
can
are
see,
now.
you know, if that's something we can do that within the recommendation too. We can just go slow on that and go fast on Anson, for example.
I think we can move.
I anticipate, Mr. Chair, that, you know, some of these projects, some will have difficulties, some won't, you know, some will overtake others. So, you know, we've got a big job to implement this now, so we'll keep in touch.
Look, I think I'll move the motion. I think we've had enough debate. All in favour, hands please. Against? Is there anyone against?
Noted to the fact that I don't want anything to do with Byng Street.
Yeah, no, we'll take that on board. Right, 5.6. External agencies. Council members.
Recommendation.
Recommendation, Mr. Mayor,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'll nominate Councillor Whitten for the board of Orange 360.
Second that.
Yep. The representative of the Members Assembly of Civic Risk Mutual.
And a nomination, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry?
Councillor Duffy has been nominated by Councillor Hamling.
I'll second that. You're the
Seconded
finance
by
chair.
Councillor
You should be
Whitten.
on there.
Seconded by
Just like
Councillor
to thank
Whitten.
the councillors for their nomination.
All right, all in favour of that? No other nominations? Thank you.
Unanimous.
Now, they're the only ones we have to do, isn't it?
Correct. Thank you,
Yep.
councillors.
Thank you very much. The Chief Executive Officer will advise the Council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by a closed meeting of Orange City Council.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
In accordance with the Local Government Act of 1993 and the Local Government General Regulation of 2005, in the opinion of the Chief Executive Officer, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 10A, brackets 2 of the Act, and should be dealt with in a confidential session of council meeting closed to the press and the public. Now, the items to be considered in closed are 6.1, tender for construction of concrete footpaths, 6.2, net waste tender for collection and disposal of used motor oil, 6.3, land portfolio review, 6.5, sale of 16 Elwyn Drive, Orange, 6.6, tender for the design and construction of park and footpath lighting, and 6.7, BMX track demolition. The reasons for confidentiality: the items are classified confidential under the provisions of section 10A, brackets 2, bracket C, information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business. Okay.
Just wait
Right.
to go into close, Mr. Mayor. We're just closing the doors and asking members of the public to leave. And then we will then confirm whether when Zoom goes into Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting, could I ask that you read a different reason for confidentiality under 6.4 or allow me to?
I will allow you to.
Thank you. Yeah, this item is classified confidential under the provisions of section 10A2B, personal hardship of any resident or ratepayer. The doors are closed.
Yep.